What if Harry Potter was the reincarnation of Superman? Chapter 1. The Boy of Steel. The red sun was dying. Harry watched it happen from somewhere that wasn't his cupboard under the stairs. He stood on a balcony made of crystal, overlooking a city of impossible towers that stretched toward a crimson sky. The buildings weren't made of brick or concrete. They were grown from something that looked like frozen light, spiraling upward in shapes that hurt his brain to look at. The sun pulsed once, twice, and then it began to tear itself apart. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. His chest hurt. Not the kind of hurt from when Dudley punched him in the ribs last Tuesday, but something deeper. Something that felt like grief so heavy it could crush mountains. A woman's voice called his name. Not Harry. Something else. A name that started with a hard sound and ended with a whisper of wind. She was beautiful, this woman, with dark hair and eyes that held the same desperate love his mother must have had in those final moments before the green light. "You must go," she was saying. Her hands were on his face, cupping his cheeks. "You must live." The towers began to crumble. People were running, screaming, but the sound came to him muffled, like he was underwater. A man grabbed his arm. The man had gray at his temples and wore robes that looked like frozen starlight. He was saying something important, something Harry needed to remember, but the words kept slipping away like water through his fingers. "Remember who you are," the man said. "Remember what you stand for." The ground split open beneath him. Harry fell. He woke up floating. For exactly 3 heartbeats, Harry Potter hovered 6 inches above his thin mattress in the cupboard under the stairs. He could see it happening. His blanket dangled beneath him like a sad flag. His glasses sat on the floor where they'd fallen off his face. A spider on the wall had frozen mid-crawl, probably as confused as he was. Then gravity remembered he existed, and he crashed back down hard enough to rattle the door on its hinges. "Boy!" Uncle Vernon's voice thundered from somewhere upstairs, thick with sleep and anger. "What in the blazes are you doing in there?" Harry's heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat, in his wrists, in his temples. He was drenched in sweat, Dudley's old T-shirt sticking to his chest like a second skin. He grabbed his glasses and shoved them on with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. "Nothing," he called back, and his voice cracked embarrassingly. "Just fell out of bed." A grunt from above. The creak of bedsprings as Vernon rolled over. Heavy footsteps moving toward the bathroom. Harry let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. His whole body was trembling. He pressed his back against the wall of his cupboard and drew his knees up to his chest, making himself as small as possible. He looked at his hands. They were shaking badly. Normal hands. 10 fingers. Bitten nails because he couldn't stop the habit, no matter how many times Aunt Petunia smacked them with a wooden spoon. Nothing special about them at all. Except he'd just been floating. Harry pressed his palms against his eyes until he saw spots. The dream was already fading, but pieces of it clung to him like cobwebs. A red sun, towers of crystal, a woman telling him he must live, a man telling him to remember. Remember what? He didn't know anything worth remembering. He was just Harry. Just the boy in the cupboard. Just the freak the Dursleys had to put up with, because nobody else would take him. He'd had weird dreams before. Everyone did, but he'd never woken up floating. "I'm going mental," he whispered to himself, his voice barely audible. "That's it. I've finally gone completely mental." The spider on the wall resumed its crawl, apparently having decided that whatever just happened wasn't its problem. Harry wished he could do the same. He wished he could just forget it. Chalk it up to a weird dream and too little sleep and the stress of another summer with the Dursleys. But he couldn't. Because somewhere deep in his chest, in a place he didn't even know existed until this moment, something had woken up, and it wasn't going back to sleep. Morning at number 4. Privet Drive started the same way it always did. Harry was up before the sun, because that was the rule. He had the bacon frying and the coffee percolating by the time Aunt Petunia came down in her housecoat, her face pinched and disapproving before she'd even said a word. "You're burning that," she said, even though he wasn't. "I can smell it." Harry didn't argue. He just adjusted the heat and kept his head down. Through the kitchen window, he could see the familiar street, the neat hedges, the identical houses with their identical lawns and identical cars in their identical driveways. And beyond them, rising against the morning sky like monuments from another world, the gleaming towers of the city. Metropolis. Harry had grown up seeing those towers on the horizon. Everyone had. The great city with its Art Deco spires and the massive globe that topped the Daily Planet building, visible even from the suburbs on a clear day. Surrey sat in its shadow the way smaller towns always sat in the shadows of great cities. Dudley thundered into the kitchen like a small earthquake, still in his pajamas, his hair sticking up in 17 different directions. "I want pancakes," he announced, dropping into his chair. "Not bacon. Pancakes." "We're having bacon, Dudders," Petunia said, though her voice was already taking on that uncertain wobble that meant she was considering giving in. "You like bacon. I like pancakes more." Dudley's face was starting to go red. Harry recognized the early warning signs of a tantrum and moved to get the pancake mix from the cupboard. But Petunia waved him off. "Fine, pancakes. But eat the bacon too. I'm not having it go to waste." The Daily Planet landed on the doorstep with a heavy thwack, and Harry went to collect it like he did every morning. The headline today was something about a bank robbery downtown, foiled by mysterious circumstances. The photograph moved slightly, showing tiny figures running in circles while police officers scratched their heads. Harry had grown up with magical photographs moving in newspapers, even the Muggle ones, though most people pretended not to notice. He brought the paper inside and set it at Uncle Vernon's place at the table just as Vernon came down, dressed in his work suit, despite it being Saturday. He had a meeting with some Japanese investors, or so he'd been telling everyone for the past week. "Any freaks in the news today?" Vernon asked, snapping open the paper with practiced aggression. "Just the usual," Harry muttered, turning back to the stove. "What was that?" "Nothing, Uncle Vernon." Vernon grunted and buried himself in the paper. Petunia was now fussing over Dudley's pancakes, cutting them into perfectly equal pieces even though Dudley was 11 years old and perfectly capable of using a knife himself. "Dudley needs new shoes," Petunia announced, examining her son's feet with the intensity of a surgeon. "We'll go to the shopping center today, Vern, before your meeting." Vernon grunted again without looking up. Harry kept his head down and focused on not burning the next batch of pancakes. He knew what was coming. "Mrs. Figg is busy," Petunia continued, her voice going tight the way it always did when she had to acknowledge Harry's existence directly. "She's got her sister visiting, so the boy will have to come with us." Dudley's fork clattered against his plate. His face was already going from red to purple. "I don't want him there! He ruins everything! Last time he came, he made my ice cream fall off the cone." Harry hadn't done anything to that ice cream. It had just been a windy day, but there was no point arguing. "He'll behave himself," Vernon said, finally looking up from the paper, his small eyes fixed on Harry with familiar contempt. "Won't you, boy?" "Yes, Uncle Vernon. No funny business. No strange looks. No talking to strangers. No drawing attention to yourself in any way, shape, or form. Understood?" "Yes, Uncle Vernon." Vernon's eyes narrowed. "I mean it, boy. One toe out of line, and you'll be in that cupboard for a week with nothing but bread and water." Harry said nothing. He just nodded and went back to the pancakes, keeping his face blank. But as he scraped batter onto the griddle and listened to Dudley whine about having to share his shopping trip with his freak cousin, his mind kept drifting back to the dream, to the feeling of weightlessness, to the red sun dying in a crimson sky. Something was wrong with him. Something had always been wrong with him. The Dursleys had made that clear his entire life. He just hadn't realized how wrong until now. The shopping center was chaos. It was a Saturday in July, which meant families everywhere, kids running wild, the smell of fried food from the food court mixing with perfume samples from the department stores, and the general scent of too many people in too small a space. Harry trailed behind the Dursleys like a shadow nobody wanted. He was wearing Dudley's old clothes, as always, which meant his jeans were too big and his shirt hung off his shoulders like a tent. Aunt Petunia had given him strict instructions to stay at least 3 feet behind them at all times, so no one would think he was with them. Dudley had already picked out 3 pairs of trainers that all looked exactly the same to Harry, and now they were waiting while Petunia argued with a sales clerk about some kind of discount she was sure she was entitled to. "Mum says we got a voucher in the post," Dudley was saying loudly. "A 10% off voucher. It had a picture of a trainer on it." "I'm sorry, madam, but without the actual voucher, I can't apply the discount. This is ridiculous. I'm a regular customer. Vernon, tell him." Vernon had found a chair and was reading the sports section of a old paper someone had left behind. He grunted noncommittally. Harry drifted toward the entrance of the shoe shop, trying to look invisible. A television mounted on the wall was showing the news. Something about the mayor of Metropolis giving a speech. Then a cut to what looked like old footage, grainy and overexposed, of a figure in red and blue flying over the city skyline. Harry's heart stuttered. The newsreader was saying something about the anniversary of the last confirmed sighting and ongoing debate about the existence of so-called super-powered individuals. But Harry couldn't focus on the words. He was staring at the figure on the screen. The red cape, the blue suit, the way they moved through the air like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like flying was easy. A memory flashed. Not from the dream, but from somewhere else. Somewhere deeper. The feeling of wind rushing past his face. The city spread out below him like a map. The certainty, the absolute deep certainty, that he was meant to be up there. "I'm bored," Dudley announced, shoving past Harry and snapping him out of whatever trance he'd fallen into. "This is taking forever. I'm going to look at the toys." "Dudley, wait," Petunia called, but she was still deep in battle with the sales clerk. Vernon looked up from his paper. "Go watch him," he said to Harry without really looking at him. Harry went. Not because he wanted to, but because that was how it worked. Watch Dudley, keep Dudley happy. Take the blame when Dudley inevitably broke something. Dudley had already found a display of toy cars near the back of the shop. He grabbed one off the shelf and examined it with the critical eye of someone who already owned about 50 toy cars exactly like it. "I want this one," he said to Harry, as if Harry could do anything about it. "Then ask your mum. She's right over there. She's busy." Dudley shoved the car into his pocket with a casualness that said he'd done this before and gotten away with it every time. "Let's go outside. I want ice cream. We can't just leave. Your parents will worry." Dudley's piggy eyes narrowed. "They'll worry about me. They won't care about you. You're just the freak who lives in the cupboard." Harry's hands clenched at his sides. Something hot flickered behind his eyes. For just a second, the world seemed to take on a reddish tint, like he was looking at everything through a filter of anger. Dudley's face changed. He took a step back. "What was that? Your eyes just did something." "I don't know what you're talking about," Harry said. Even though his heart was suddenly racing, he blinked rapidly, and whatever Dudley had seen was gone. "Freak," Dudley muttered, but there was less conviction in it than usual. He was already backing toward the exit. "I'm getting ice cream. Are you coming or not?" Harry followed, not because he wanted ice cream, but because Vernon would kill him if he let Dudley out of his sight. They ended up in the car park. The sun was high and hot, the kind of summer day that made the tarmac shimmer. Dudley had spotted an ice cream van parked near the road, and was heading toward it with the single-minded determination of a hippopotamus approaching water. "Dudley, wait." Harry jogged to catch up, his two big shoes slapping against the pavement. "You don't have any money. So, I'll tell them to put it on Dad's account." "That's not how ice cream vans work, Dudley." "How would you know? You've never even had ice cream from one." That was true. Harry had watched Dudley eat ice cream from vans about 100 times, but he'd never been offered one himself. Dudley was already at the curb, one foot stepping off into the road, his eyes fixed on the van with its colorful menu of frozen treats. The driver was serving another customer, a woman with two small children who were arguing about whether to get chocolate flakes. Harry heard it before he saw it. The roar of an engine, tires squealing against asphalt, a car coming too fast around the corner, weaving like the driver had lost control or wasn't even trying to steer. Time did something impossible. It slowed down. Harry watched the car approach like it was moving through honey. A blue sedan, dented on one side, rust spots around the wheel wells. The driver's face was frozen in a mask of panic behind the windshield, his mouth open in a scream that hadn't finished forming. Harry could see the individual hairs on the man's head, could count the beads of sweat rolling down his forehead. He could see raindrops from last night's storm still clinging to lamp posts, each one perfect and still. He could hear the heartbeats of pigeons on a nearby rooftop, each thump slow and distinct, like drums being played at quarter speed. He could smell the exhaust from the car's engine, the rubber burning against the road, the fear rolling off the driver in waves. Dudley was standing in the road. His foot had just touched the tarmac. He was turning his head toward the sound of the engine, his expression only beginning to shift from annoyance to confusion. At this speed, it would take him another 3 seconds to realize what was happening. 3 seconds too long. The car was 15 feet away. Harry didn't think. He moved. The world blurred around him as he crossed the distance between himself and his cousin in what felt like a single step. His muscles didn't burn. His lungs didn't strain. It was the most natural thing he'd ever done. As easy as breathing, as instinctive as blinking. He grabbed Dudley by the shoulder and shoved him back toward the pavement with one hand. Dudley flew backward like he weighed nothing, landing on his backside 3 feet from the curb with a look of pure shock on his pudgy face. And then Harry turned to face the car. It was still coming. Still too fast. Still going to hit him. Harry raised his hands. The car hit them. The front bumper crumpled like aluminum foil against his palms. The hood buckled, folding upward in a wave of twisted metal that sent chips of paint flying through the air like confetti. The windshield cracked in a spiderweb pattern that spread outward from the point of impact, fracturing into 1,000 pieces but somehow staying in place. The engine screamed, a high-pitched whine of machinery being forced to stop when every law of physics said it should keep going. And then it died with a grinding choke of destroyed pistons and shattered cylinders. Harry's feet slid back 3 inches on the tarmac. That was it. 3 inches. The car had stopped. Time snapped back to normal speed like a rubber band. Sound returned in a rush, overwhelming after the eerie quiet. People were screaming. The woman with the 2 children was clutching them to her chest, her face white with terror. The ice cream man had dropped his scoop and was staring with his mouth hanging open. Somewhere behind Harry, Dudley was making a high-pitched keening noise that might have been crying or might have been shock or might have been both. The driver slumped over his deployed airbag, groaning. Blood was running from a cut on his forehead. But he was alive. He was moving. Harry looked down at his hands. They were pressed into the metal of the car's hood. His fingers had left dents. Perfect impressions, like he'd pushed them into soft clay rather than steel. He could see the whorls of his fingerprints embedded in the metal. He pulled his hands back slowly, and the car groaned, settling on its destroyed front suspension. The entire front end was caved in, compressed into a space about half its original size. It looked like someone had driven it straight into a concrete wall at 60 miles an hour. His palms were clean. Not a scratch. Not even red from the impact. He turned them over, examining them like they belonged to someone else. "What?" His voice came out as a whisper. "What did I just do?" People were gathering now. A man in a business suit with a phone pressed to his ear, shouting at emergency services. Two teenage girls with their phones out, filming everything. An elderly woman crossing herself and muttering prayers. Someone was helping the driver out of the wreckage, asking him if he could walk, if anything was broken. And everyone was staring at Harry. "Did you see that?" One of the teenage girls said, her voice high with disbelief. He stopped it. With his hands. He literally just stopped a whole car with his bare hands. "That's impossible," her friend said, but she was still filming. "That's completely impossible. People can't do that."
"I saw it! Look at the car!"
"Look at the dents." Harry's chest was tight. His heart was pounding again. That same thundering beat from this morning when he'd woken up floating. The world felt too loud, too bright, too much. He could hear everything. The whispered conversations across the car park. The sirens approaching from the city, still at least 5 minutes away but growing louder. The click of phone cameras as people took pictures of him, of the car, of the impossible dent shaped like his hands. A flash of memory hit him like a punch to the gut. A red cape billowing in wind. A city seen from above, all lights and life and hope. The feeling of absolute certainty that he was meant to protect people, to save them, to be something more than human. A symbol, a beacon. A name? No, Harry whispered. He backed away from the car. His legs felt unsteady, which was insane because he'd just stopped a 2-ton vehicle with his bare hands and hadn't felt a thing. No. He turned and ran. Not normal running. Not the way he ran when Dudley and his gang chased him after school. This was different. The world blurred past him, and he was suddenly on the other side of the car park, then at the edge of the shopping center, then around the corner and out of sight. When he finally stopped, gasping for breath that he somehow didn't actually need, he was standing in an alley behind a row of shops, 3 blocks away from the car park. He had no memory of covering the distance. It had happened in seconds. Harry leaned against a brick wall and slid down until he was sitting on the ground, his knees drawn up to his chest. His whole body was shaking. His hands still looked normal. 10 fingers, bitten nails, nothing special. But he'd just stopped a car. He'd just run faster than any human could possibly run. "What am I?" he asked the empty alley, his voice cracking. The alley didn't answer. A stray cat watched him from behind a rubbish bin, then apparently decided he wasn't interesting enough to bother with and slunk away. Harry stayed there, sitting on the dirty ground behind the shops, trying to make sense of a world that had stopped making sense approximately 6 hours ago when he'd woken up floating above his mattress. The Dursleys found him 20 minutes later. Or rather, a police officer found him and brought him back to where Vernon and Petunia were standing by their car, their faces matching masks of fury and fear. "There you are," the officer said, a young woman with a tired smile. "Your aunt and uncle were worried sick." She clearly didn't believe that any more than Harry did, but she handed him over anyway. Dudley was already in the back seat of the car, wrapped in a shock blanket someone had given him, even though he hadn't actually been hurt. He stared at Harry through the window with an expression Harry had never seen on his cousin's face before. It wasn't anger or contempt or the usual bullying sneer. It looked almost like terror. "Get in the car," Vernon said through gritted teeth. Now, Harry got in. The drive home was completely silent. Vernon's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. His face had gone from red to purple to a strange, mottled gray that Harry had never seen before. Petunia kept glancing back at Harry in the rearview mirror, like she expected him to explode or burst into flames or transform into something even more unnatural than he apparently already was. Dudley pressed himself against the car door, as far from Harry as he could possibly get in the confined space. He didn't say a word. Harry stared out the window and watched the towers of Metropolis pass by in the distance. The Daily Planet globe caught the afternoon sun and gleamed like gold against the blue sky. Another flash of memory, that globe but closer. Standing on the roof of the building, the wind whipping around him, looking down at the city that he was sworn to protect. A woman standing beside him, her dark hair blowing in the breeze, saying something that made him laugh. Harry squeezed his eyes shut and forced the image away. The moment they pulled into the driveway at Previtt Drive, Vernon was out of the car and dragging Harry toward the house by the arm. His grip was bruising, or at least it should have been, but Harry couldn't feel any pain. Petunia hustled Dudley upstairs with orders to take a bath and lie down. Then she shut all the curtains in the kitchen, as if whatever was about to happen needed to be hidden from the neighbors. "What?" Vernon said, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. "Did you do?" "I don't know." Harry's voice cracked. "I didn't mean to. The car was going to hit Dudley and I don't know how I did it. I just moved and then my hands were there and the car stopped." "Stopped?" Vernon repeated. "You stopped a car with your hands."
Wes, that's impossible.
"I know. It's freakish. It's unnatural. It's... Vernon's face was getting redder by the second. A vein was throbbing in his temple. "You did this on purpose. You've been hiding this, haven't you? All these years, pretending to be normal. And really you've been some kind of monster!" "I didn't know," Harry shouted back, and his voice came out louder than he intended. The kitchen windows rattled slightly.
"I didn't know I could do any of this.
I woke up floating this morning and I don't know why. I stopped the car and I don't know how. I ran 3 blocks in about 2 seconds and I don't know what's happening to me." There was a moment of absolute silence. Then Vernon raised his hand. It wasn't the first time. Harry had learned to flinch, to duck, to make himself small. But this time he didn't move. Some instinct, some deep down knowledge that hadn't been there yesterday, told him he didn't need to. Vernon's palm connected with Harry's shoulder. There was a crack, a horrible wet sound like a branch snapping, and then Vernon was screaming, clutching his hand to his chest. 3 of his fingers bent at angles that fingers weren't supposed to bend. Petunia screamed too. She rushed toward her husband, then stopped, then backed away from Harry, pressing herself against the kitchen counter like she was trying to phase through it. "What are you?" she whispered. Her voice was barely a breath. Her face had gone completely white. "What are you?" Harry looked down at his shoulder. His shirt wasn't even torn. There wasn't a mark on him. Vernon had just broken 3 fingers trying to hit him, and Harry hadn't felt anything at all. "I don't know," he said, and this time his voice was steady even though his insides felt like they were tearing apart. "I don't know what I am." Petunia's face went through something Harry couldn't identify. Fear, yes. Revulsion, definitely. But something else too. Something that looked almost like recognition. "He's made of steel," she said. She wasn't talking to Harry. She was talking to Vernon, who was still whimpering over his broken fingers. Just like the freak in the news. Just like those things that fall from the sky. "What freak?" Harry demanded. "What are you talking about?" "Aunt Petunia, please. I need to know what's happening to me." But Petunia just shook her head. She grabbed Vernon's arm and pulled him toward the door. "We're going to hospital. You stay here. You stay in your cupboard, and you don't come out until we get back. And for God's sake, don't touch anything. Aunt Petunia, please. I need to understand." She stopped at the door. For a moment, just a moment, she looked at Harry with something that wasn't hatred or fear. It almost looked like pity, or maybe regret. "Your mother," she said quietly. "Lily," She knew things, unnatural things, about where you really came from. I thought it was just her usual nonsense, her witch talk. But now, she shook her head again. You're not normal, boy. You never were, and it's got nothing to do with magic. Then she was gone, half carrying Vernon out to the car, leaving Harry alone in the kitchen with more questions than he'd ever had in his life. Harry didn't go to his cupboard. Instead, he went to the living room, where Uncle Vernon kept his collection of Daily Planet newspapers. Vernon hated the Planet, called it a rag full of freaks and fantasy and left-wing propaganda. But he read it anyway because it was the biggest paper in the country, and he liked to know what the enemies of normal folk were up to. Harry dug through the stack. He wasn't sure what he was looking for until he found it. A headline from 3 years ago. Man of Steel sighting in Metropolis Tower collapse, hero or hoax. The photograph was blurry. A figure in red and blue, hovering above a cloud of dust and debris. The article talked about eyewitness accounts of a man who could fly, who could stop bullets, who could lift cars with his bare hands. Experts dismissed it as mass hysteria. Eyewitnesses insisted it was real. Harry's hands were shaking again. He kept digging. Found more articles going back years. Red Cape blur stops runaway train. Flying man rescues child from burning building. Daily Planet editor claims Superman is real. Critics demand evidence. Superman. The word hit Harry like a physical blow. He knew that name. He didn't know how he knew it, but it resonated somewhere deep in his chest, in that place where the grief from his dreams lived. It felt like coming home. It felt like remembering. He found an older article from maybe 10 years ago, before the sightings had stopped. The photograph was clearer than the others. The figure was standing on a rooftop, cape billowing behind him, looking out over Metropolis with a quiet certainty that Harry felt in his bones. And then he saw the face. The paper fell from his hands. It was him, older, bigger. The jaw was stronger, and there was no lightning bolt scar on the forehead. But the eyes were the same, the exact same green eyes that looked back at Harry every time he saw his reflection. The same eyes his mother had, according to everyone who'd ever known her. No, Harry whispered. That can't be. But even as he said it, more memories flooded in. Flying above the clouds, the sun warm on his face. The feeling of sunlight on his skin, not just warming him, but filling him with energy, with power, with life. A woman with dark hair and fierce eyes calling him by a name that wasn't Harry. A man in robes made of light saying words in a language that felt like home. Kal-El, the memory whispered. My name was Kal-El. Harry grabbed the sides of his head and squeezed, as if he could physically force the memories back where they came from. Stop it. Stop it. The memories didn't stop. They came faster now, cascading through his mind like a waterfall. A planet with a red sun. Scientists' warning of doom that nobody believed. A baby placed in a small silver pod. A lifetime spent hiding what he was, pretending to be Clark Kent, pretending to be normal, protecting a world that wasn't his. And then one final image, clear as glass, a battle. Creatures made of gray stone and hatred, eyes glowing with malice. Fire and lightning and the screaming of millions. A choice to sacrifice everything to save everyone. Death. Harry gasped and his eyes flew open. He was lying on the living room floor. The newspapers were scattered around him like fallen leaves. His face was wet with tears he didn't remember crying. I died, he said to the empty room, and his voice sounded strange and far away. I died, and somehow I'm here. Somehow I'm him and me. Both of us. The world felt like it was made of cardboard, fragile, breakable. And he was something that didn't belong in it. Something that could tear through it like tissue paper if he wasn't careful. A sound from the front of the house made him jump. The mail slot clicking, something landing on the mat. Harry got up slowly. His legs felt unsteady, which was strange because he was pretty sure his body could now withstand a car crash without a scratch. He walked to the front door and looked down at the envelope on the mat. It was thick, yellowish. made of something that looked like old parchment. Harry reached for it, and something happened. His vision shifted. Suddenly he could see through the paper. The words inside became visible, black ink on cream parchment, as clear as if he was holding the letter open in his hands. Awars Ceolov Doitcherft and Muzaroi, Headmaster. Albus Dumbledore. Dear Mr. Potter, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Harry blinked and his vision snapped back to normal. The envelope was still sealed in his hands. He hadn't opened it. X-ray vision. He had X-ray vision. Of course he did. Because apparently stopping cars with his bare hands and breaking people's fingers with his skin and running faster than the eye could follow wasn't enough. He laughed. It came out high and slightly hysterical. A school for witchcraft magic. As if being whatever he was wasn't complicated enough. Now he was apparently a wizard too. Brilliant, Harry said to no one, his voice cracking halfway through the word. Absolutely bloody brilliant. He looked at the envelope in his hands, at the emerald green ink spelling out his name and address. Mr. H. Potter, The Cupboard Under the Stairs, 4 Privet Drive, Little Winging, Surrey. Someone knew where he slept. Someone knew he was different. And that someone was inviting him to a school for people like him. Harry thought about the newspapers scattered on the living room floor. About Superman. About the man with his face who could fly and stop trains and was apparently real, not a hoax, not a fantasy. He thought about the dream of the red sun and the dying planet and the name that wasn't Harry. Kal-El. A name from another world, another life, another death. He thought about Aunt Petunia's words. Your mother knew things. About where you really came from, and for the first time in his life. Harry Potter wondered if maybe he wasn't just a freak. Maybe he was something else entirely. He tucked the letter into his pocket and went back to the living room to clean up the newspapers before the Dursleys returned. Whatever was happening to him, whatever he was becoming, one thing was clear. His life was about to change. And somewhere underneath all the fear and confusion and the fragments of memories that weren't his, underneath the panic and the questions and the impossible reality of what he'd done today, Harry felt something he hadn't felt in 10 years of living under the stairs. Hope. Platform 9 and 3 quarters was chaos. Harry stood at the edge of it all, his trunk beside him, trying to make sense of the noise and the smoke, and the hundreds of people rushing past. The Hogwarts Express sat on the tracks like a sleeping dragon, all red paint and brass fittings, steam billowing from its engine in great white clouds. He could hear everything. That was the problem. Every conversation on the platform came to him at once, overlapping and competing for attention. A mother telling her son to write home. 2 girls giggling about someone named Cedric. An old wizard complaining about the price of owl treats. A baby crying 3 carriages down. Harry pressed his fingers against his temples and tried to focus. He'd been practicing this for the past month, ever since Hagrid had shown up at the Dursleys and told him he was a wizard. Filtering out the noise. Turning down the volume on the world. It worked, mostly. The voices faded to a manageable hum and Harry let out a breath. You all right there, mate? Harry turned. A boy about his age was standing nearby. Red hair sticking up in every direction, a smudge of something that might have been chocolate on his nose. He had a cart with a battered trunk on it, and an actual rat sitting on his shoulder. Yeah, Harry said. Just a lot to take in. First year. That obvious. The red-headed boy grinned. Bit yeah, you've got that look. Like someone's just told you magic is real and you're still waiting for the punchline. He stuck out his hand. Ron Weasley. Harry shook it. He was careful, so careful to keep his grip light. He'd accidentally crushed a doorknob last week, and he didn't want to break this kid's fingers on their first meeting. Harry Potter. Ron's eyes went wide. His gaze flicked up to Harry's forehead to the scar that was mostly hidden by his messy hair. Bleemy. Are you really? The Harry Potter. Just Harry, really? Right. Yeah, of course. Ron was still staring. It's just I've heard about you my whole life. The boy who lived and all that. Mum used to tell us stories. He seemed to realize he was being weird and shook himself. Sorry, that's probably annoying. People probably do that all the time. You're actually the first, Harry admitted. I only found out about all this a month ago. Seriously, you didn't know you were famous. Didn't know magic was real until Hagrid showed up. Ron let out a low whistle. Bloody hell. That must have been a shock. You have no idea, Harry thought. Finding out about magic had actually been the less shocking part of his summer. Come on, Ron said, jerking his head toward the train. Let's find a compartment before they're all full. My brothers have already abandoned me. Typical. Pupper, they found an empty compartment near the back of the train. Harry lifted his trunk onto the overhead rack, being careful not to make it look too easy. The thing weighed at least 50 pounds, but it felt like a shoebox to him now. Ron was struggling with his own trunk, the rat still clinging to his shoulder. Scabbers, would you get off? You're not helping. Want a hand? Nah, I've got it. Ron gave a final heave and the trunk slid into place. He collapsed onto the seat, breathing hard. These things are murder. Mum packed half the house in there. I swear. Harry sat down across from him. Through the window he could see families saying their goodbyes on the platform. Mothers hugging children. Fathers giving last-minute advice. Normal families doing normal things. The Dursleys had dropped him at King's Cross without a word. Vernon hadn't even stopped the car properly, just slowed down enough for Harry to jump out with his trunk. The broken fingers had healed, but Vernon hadn't forgotten. Neither had Petunia. Neither had Dudley. None of them had spoken to Harry for the entire month since the incident with the car. You all right? Ron asked. You've gone all quiet. Fine. Just thinking. About Hogwarts. I can tell you loads if you want. My whole family's been there. Bill and Charlie have already graduated. Percy's a prefect now, won't shut up about it, and Fred and George are in 3rd year. They're mental, those two. Good mental, though. Harry found himself smiling despite his mood. Big family. Too big sometimes. There's also Ginny, my sister, but she's not old enough yet. Mum's already crying about next year when she'll be all alone in the house. Ron rolled his eyes, but there was affection in it. What about you? Any brothers or sisters? No. Just me? Lucky. You don't have to deal with hand-me-downs. Ron gestured at his robes, which were a bit faded and slightly too short at the wrists. Everything I've got belonged to one of my brothers first. Even Scabbers. He poked the rat, who squeaked in protest. He used to be Percy's. Harry looked down at his own clothes. Dudley's old jeans. A sweater that had once been gray but was now closer to dishwater. I know something about hand-me-downs. Ron studied him for a moment, then seemed to decide not to push. So, what house do you reckon you'll be in? Houses? You don't know about the houses. Blimey, you really did grow up with muggles. Ron leaned forward, warming to the subject. There's 4 of them. Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. You get sorted on your first night. It's this whole thing with a hat. A hat. The sorting hat, it's enchanted. Looks into your head and decides where you belong. Ron made a face. My whole family's been in Gryffindor. I'll probably be there too. Not that I'd want to be in Slytherin. That's where all the dark wizards come from. You know, who was a Slytherin? Harry's stomach tightened. Voldemort. Ron flinched so hard he nearly knocked Scabbers off his shoulder. Don't say the name. Why not? It's just a name. Just a mate. People don't say it. It's not done. Ron was looking at Harry with a mixture of horror and reluctant admiration. You really aren't scared of anything, are you? Harry thought about stopping a car with his bare hands. About waking up floating. About memories of a dying planet that belonged to someone else. About what he was becoming. I'm scared of plenty, he said quietly. The compartment door slid open before Ron could respond. A girl with bushy brown hair and slightly too Large front teeth poked her head in. She was already wearing her Hogwarts robes. "Has anyone seen a toad?" "A boy named Neville's lost one." "No toads here," Ron said. "Just a rat." The girl's eyes swept the compartment, cataloging everything with an intensity that made Harry's skin prickle. Her gaze lingered on him for a moment longer than was comfortable. "You've got dirt on your nose," she told Ron. "Just there," she pointed. Then, to Harry, "I'm Hermione Granger." "And you are Harry Potter." Her eyes went wide. "Are you really? I've read all about you in modern magical history and the rise and fall of the dark arts and great wizarding events of the 20th century." "Light reading," Ron muttered. Hermione ignored him. "You defeated who when you were just a baby. No one knows how. The books have theories, of course, but nothing conclusive. It's actually quite fascinating from a magical theory perspective." "I don't really remember it," Harry said. "I was one, obviously, but still." "You're in all the books." She said it like being in books was the highest honor a person could achieve. "Anyway, I should keep looking for the toad. Neville's quite upset." She paused at the door. "You should both change into your robes soon. I expect we'll be arriving before long." And then she was gone, the door sliding shut behind her. Ron stared after her. "Bit intense, that one." "She seems thorough. That's one word for it." Ron shook his head. "Hope she's not in Gryffindor." "Could you imagine? She'd have the common room organized by subject within a week." Harry laughed, and for a moment, he felt almost normal. Just a kid on a train, making friends, going to school. Then his ears picked up a conversation from 3 compartments away, 2 boys talking about him, and the moment shattered. "Harry Potter's on the train. Draco says he's going to introduce himself." Harry tuned it out. He'd gotten better at that over the summer, focusing on what was in front of him, ignoring the rest. But the respite didn't last long. The great hall took Harry's breath away. Thousands of candles floated in midair above 4 long tables packed with students. The ceiling showed a night sky full of stars, so realistic that Harry had to remind himself there was stone up there somewhere. At the far end, a table of adults watched the first years file in. Harry walked with the other nervous 11-year-olds, trying not to stand out. It was hard. People kept whispering his name, pointing at him, craning their necks to get a look at the famous scar. "That's him. Harry Potter. The one with the glasses. He's smaller than I thought he'd be." Harry kept his eyes forward and tried to ignore all of it. An old witch with a severe bun and rectangular spectacles was standing at the front of the hall, next to a wooden stool. On the stool sat a hat. It was old and patched and dirty, and Harry couldn't imagine why everyone was staring at it so intently. Then the hat twitched. A rip near the brim opened like a mouth, and it began to sing. Harry listened to the song about the 4 houses, about bravery and loyalty and wisdom and cunning, but his attention kept drifting to the head table. An old man with a long silver beard was watching him. Not the casual glances the other teachers gave, but a steady, measuring look. Dumbledore, it had to be. Hagrid had told him about the headmaster, said he was the greatest wizard alive, said Voldemort was afraid of him. Right now, those blue eyes seemed to be looking straight through Harry, like they could see everything, every secret, every memory, every impossible thing Harry had done since waking up floating in his cupboard. Harry looked away first. The sorting began. Students went up one by one, sat on the stool, had the hat placed on their heads. Some sortings were quick, the hat barely touching their hair before shouting out a house name. Others took longer, the hat mumbling to itself, the student looking increasingly nervous.
"Granger, Hermione!"
The bushy-haired girl from the train practically ran to the stool. The hat sat on her head for nearly a minute, which seemed to make her anxious before finally shouting, "GRWFI&R." Ron groaned quietly beside Harry. Wonderful. More names. More sortings. A pale, pointed boy named Draco Malfoy barely had the hat touch his head before it screamed SLYACI. He looked smug about it.
Then, Potter, Harry.
The whispers exploded. Harry forced himself to walk forward on legs that didn't feel entirely steady. Every eye in the hall was on him. He could hear their heartbeats, hundreds of them, all beating slightly faster with curiosity and excitement. He sat on the stool. The hat dropped over his eyes, blocking out the great hall. Well, said a small voice in his ear. What do we have here? Harry's whole body went rigid. Interesting, the voice continued. Very interesting. I've sorted thousands of students in my time, Mr. Potter, but I don't think I've ever encountered anything quite like you. What do you mean? Harry thought, not sure if the hat could hear him. Oh, I can hear you just fine. I can hear everything in here. A pause. 2 threads. How remarkable. One made of earth and wood, magic in its purest form, and the other steel and stars, something not of this world. Harry's hands gripped the edges of the stool. He felt the wood creak under his fingers and forced himself to loosen his grip. Please don't tell anyone. I am bound by ancient magic, Mr. Potter. What I see in a student's mind stays between us. But I must say, this complicates things. Where to put a boy who could break this castle with his bare hands if he chose to? I wouldn't do that. No, I can see that. You have a good heart, both of them. The one you were born with and the one you carry from before. Both want the same thing: to help, to protect, to save. The hat seemed to be thinking. Not Slytherin, I think. Their ambition would corrupt you, or you would destroy them. Ravenclaw would pick you apart trying to understand what you are. Hufflepuff would accept you, but you would always hold back, afraid of hurting them. So what's left? Gryffindor, the house of the brave. The house of those who run toward danger instead of away from it. The house of those who will stand between the innocent and the darkness, no matter the cost. The hat's voice softened. You've done that already, haven't you? Even before you knew what you were. You stepped in front of that car without thinking. Harry didn't answer. He didn't need to. The hat already knew. But I warn you, Mr. Potter, you carry a shattering potential, the power to save or to destroy. The choice will always be yours. Remember that when the time comes. What time? What are you talking about? But the hat just chuckled, a dry, rustling sound, and then it shouted loud enough for the whole hall to hear, Grfindor. The Gryffindor table erupted. The Weasley twins Harry had met briefly on the train were standing up, chanting,
We got Potter!
We got Potter! People were clapping and cheering. Percy Weasley, the prefect, was shaking Harry's hand enthusiastically as he sat down. Harry smiled and nodded and said thank you, but inside his mind was racing. The hat knew. The hat had seen everything, and it had talked about 2 threads, 2 hearts, as if Harry really was 2 people somehow fused together. Steel and stars. Something not of this world. At the head table, Dumbledore was still watching him. And this time, when their eyes met, the old wizard gave a small nod, like he knew too. The first week at Hogwarts passed in a blur of moving staircases, talking portraits, and lessons that made Harry's head spin for reasons that had nothing to do with his alien heritage. Transfiguration with Professor McGonagall was precise and demanding. Charms with Professor Flitwick was energetic and occasionally explosive. History of magic with Professor Binns, an actual ghost, was so boring that even Harry's enhanced senses couldn't keep him awake. And then there was potions. Professor Snape hated him. That much was clear from the first minute of the first class, when the man had looked at Harry with an expression of such pure loathing that Harry had actually checked to make sure he hadn't accidentally broken something. "Ah yes," Snape had said, his voice barely above a whisper, but somehow filling the entire dungeon. "Harry Potter, our new celebrity." The questions had come rapid fire after that. What would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood? Where would you look if I told you to find me a bezoar? What is the difference between monkshood and wolfsbane? Harry hadn't known the answers. Hermione had, her hand waving in the air so hard she was practically vibrating, but Snape hadn't called on her. Clearly, fame isn't everything. Snape had concluded, and the Slytherins had laughed. Harry had sat through the rest of the class with his jaw clenched, carefully not crushing his quill, carefully not letting his eyes glow, carefully being ordinary. It was exhausting. Being normal was so much harder than he'd ever realized. But he managed. Day after day he managed. He measured his grip when opening doors. He walked at normal speed even when he was late for class. He pretended he couldn't hear conversations happening 3 floors away. He acted like just another first year, confused and overwhelmed and trying to keep up. The act held together until the flying lesson, through Thursday afternoon. Clear sky, light wind. The Gryffindors and Slytherins stood in 2 rows on the lawn outside the castle, broomsticks lying on the grass beside them. Madam Hooch walked down the line, her yellow hawk-like eyes scanning each student. "Well, what are you waiting for? Everyone stand by a broomstick. Come on, hurry up." Harry stood by his broom. It looked old and worn, with twigs sticking out at odd angles. He'd never ridden one before, hadn't needed to. He could fly without one. But nobody could know that. "Stick out your right hand over your broom," Madam Hooch instructed, "and say up, up." Everyone shouted. Harry's broom shot into his hand so fast it made a cracking sound like a whip. Several people turned to stare. "Excellent reflexes, Mr. Potter," Madam Hooch said approvingly. Harry nodded, his heart pounding. Too fast. He'd reacted too fast. Normal people didn't catch things that quickly. Ron's broom had rolled over on the ground. Hermione's hadn't moved at all. Neville's had risen about 6 inches, and then dropped again, as if it had lost interest. "Now, when I blow my whistle, you kick off from the ground hard," Madam Hooch said. "Keep your broom steady, rise a few feet, and then come straight back down by leaning forward slightly. On my whistle. 3, 2. But Neville, nervous and twitchy, pushed off too early. His broom shot upward like a cork out of a bottle, taking him with it.
"Come back here!"
Madam Hooch shouted. But Neville was already 20 feet up and rising, his face pale with terror, his hands white, knuckled on the broom handle. Harry watched it happen in slow motion. The broom bucked. Neville lost his grip, and then he was falling, tumbling through the air, screaming. 30 feet. 25. 20. Madam Hooch was fumbling for her wand. The other students were frozen. Nobody was going to make it in time, Harry didn't think. He threw down his broom and ran. 3 steps, and he launched himself into the air, not flying exactly, but jumping, a leap that carried him 20 feet straight up. He caught Neville at 10 feet off the ground. For a moment, they hung there suspended. Harry's arms were wrapped around the other boy, Neville's face buried in his shoulder, both of them weightless. Then gravity reasserted itself and they dropped, Harry twisting so that his feet hit the grass first, absorbing the impact, setting Neville down gently beside him. The lawn was completely silent. Harry looked up. Everyone was staring at him. Madam Hooch had her wand out, frozen mid-spell. Ron's mouth was hanging open. Hermione's eyes were wide, her mind visibly working behind them, and Draco Malfoy was looking at Harry with an expression that was equal parts shock and something darker. Suspicion, maybe, or fear. "How?" Madam Hooch started. "How did you—" "I don't know," Harry said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. "I just jumped." "That wasn't a jump," Hermione said quietly. She'd stepped forward from the line, her eyes fixed on Harry. "You were floating. You caught him and you both just hovered there. For at least 2 seconds. Must have been the adrenaline," Harry said weakly. "Adrenaline doesn't let people defy gravity. Maybe it's, some kind of accidental magic." Hermione didn't look convinced, but before she could say anything else, Madam Hooch was there, checking Neville for injuries, then turning to Harry. "That was very brave, Mr. Potter, and very foolish. You could have been hurt." She paused, studying him. "But you weren't, were you? Not a scratch. Just lucky, I guess." She didn't look like she believed him either. "Well, Lucky or not, I've never seen reflexes like that. Professor McGonagall will want to hear about this. She marched Neville off toward the hospital wing, leaving the students standing in stunned silence. Draco Malfoy stepped forward. He was holding something in his hand, a small glass ball filled with red smoke. Neville's Remembrall. It must have fallen out of his pocket during the fall. What was that, Potter? Malfoy's voice was sharp, accusing. That wasn't normal. Leave it alone, Malfoy. No, I don't think I will. Malfoy tossed the Remembrall in the air and caught it. You jumped 20 feet straight up. You caught someone mid-fall. You didn't even get hurt. He stepped closer, his pale eyes narrowed. What are you? Something flickered in Harry's chest. A memory. Another lifetime. A reporter asking the same question. What are you? Where do you come from? Are you even human? Give me Neville's Remembrall. Harry said quietly. Make me. Malfoy grabbed a broom and kicked off, soaring into the air. He hovered 20 feet up, the Remembrall glinting in his hand. Come get it, Potter. Or are you only brave when someone's falling? Ron was at Harry's side. Ignore him. He's just trying to get you in trouble. Harry, don't, Hermione said. You don't know how to fly. Not properly. Harry looked at the broom on the ground, then up at Malfoy smirking down at him from 20 feet in the air. He didn't need a broom. He knew that. He could fly up there right now and take the Remembrall from Malfoy's hand before the other boy even blinked. But that would raise questions. More questions. Questions he couldn't answer. So he grabbed the broom instead. The moment he kicked off, he knew the broom was slowing him down. It was like running through water. Every instinct told him to abandon it, to just let go and fly on his own. But he held on, forced himself to work with it, to use it the way everyone expected. He rose to meet Malfoy, and even holding back, he was faster than he should have been. The broom seemed to respond to his will before he even consciously directed it. Give it here, Harry said, pulling up level with Malfoy. Or I'll knock you off that broom. Malfoy's smirk wavered. He'd expected Harry to struggle, to wobble, to look scared. Instead, Harry sat on the broom like he'd been doing it his whole life. Fine. Malfoy spat. Catch it if you can. He threw the Remembrall. Not at Harry but away toward the castle, a hard throw that sent it arcing through the air toward a stone wall. Harry didn't think he moved. The broom shot forward like it had been fired from a cannon. Wind roared past his ears. The wall rushed toward him. The Remembrall was a tiny red dot getting bigger. He caught it 6 inches before it hit the stone. His fingers closed around the glass ball and he pulled up hard, his broom skimming along the wall, missing the window by a hair's breadth. He landed on the grass to dead silence. Then someone started clapping, and suddenly everyone was cheering. Even some of the Slytherins looked impressed. "ARR!" The voice cut through the noise like a knife. Professor McGonagall was striding across the lawn, her face white with shock or anger or both. Never in all my years. She seemed lost for words. Come with me. Now. Harry's heart sank. This was it. He was going to be expelled. First week of school and he'd already blown his cover, shown everyone that he wasn't normal, that he was some kind of freak who could do impossible things. He followed McGonagall into the castle, past curious students through winding corridors, until they stopped outside a classroom. Wet here. McGonagall went inside. Harry could hear her talking to someone, her voice low and urgent. Never seen anything like it. Natural talent. Exactly what we need. She came back out with a burly older boy who looked at Harry with sudden interest. Potter, McGonagall said, and her voice had changed. There was excitement in it now, barely contained. This is Oliver Wood, captain of the Gryffindor Quidditch team. Wood, I've found you a seeker. That night, in the Gryffindor common room, Harry sat by the fire and tried to process everything that had happened. He was on the Quidditch team, the youngest seeker in a century, according to McGonagall. He should have been excited. He should have been thrilled. Instead, he felt sick. You're brooding. He looked up. Hermione was standing there, a book clutched to her chest like a shield. I'm not brooding. You absolutely are. You've been staring into the fire for 20 minutes without moving. She sat down in the chair across from him, uninvited. What you did today? That wasn't normal. Can we not talk about this? I've been doing research. First-year students don't have the magical capacity for unsupported flight. It's physically impossible. Even accidental magic has limits. Hermione. And the way you caught that remembrall, you were moving so fast I could barely track you. That's not natural ability. That's not even magical ability. That's something else entirely. Harry met her eyes. She was watching him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. Not suspicious, exactly. More like curious. Like he was a puzzle she was determined to solve. Why do you care? The question seemed to catch her off guard. What? Why do you care what I can or can't do? We barely know each other. You've spent the last week correcting my pronunciation in charms and telling me I'm holding my wand wrong. Hermione's cheeks went slightly pink. I was trying to help. Were you? Or were you just showing off how much more you know than everyone else? It was harsher than he intended. He saw her flinch, saw something vulnerable flash across her face before she covered it with that familiar expression of intellectual superiority. Fine, she said, standing up. Forget I said anything. Keep your secrets. She turned to leave. Hermione, wait. She stopped but didn't turn around. I'm sorry, Harry said. I shouldn't have said that. It's just been a weird day, a weird month, actually. A weird life, if I'm being honest. Hermione turned. Her expression had softened slightly. Everyone says I'm too intense, that I'm bossy and annoying and I ask too many questions. You are a bit intense. I know. She sat back down. But I notice things. It's how my brain works. And I noticed that when you caught Neville, you weren't scared. Everyone else was panicking, but you just moved. Like you knew exactly what to do. Like you'd done it before. Harry was quiet for a long moment. The fire crackled. Somewhere across the room, Ron was playing chess with Seamus Finnegan and losing badly. If I told you something, Harry said slowly, something that sounds completely insane, would you keep it to yourself? Hermione's eyes widened. Of course. Yes, absolutely. Harry hesitated. He barely knew this girl. She was bossy and intense and asked too many questions, just like she'd admitted. But there was something in her eyes. Something genuine. A loneliness that he recognized because he'd seen it in his own reflection often enough. I'm not entirely normal, he began. Obviously. Beyond the wizard thing. Beyond the boy who lived thing. There's something else. Something I don't really understand myself. He paused. I can do things. Things that don't have anything to do with magic. Hermione leaned forward. What kind of things? I'm strong. Really strong. Like, stop a car with my bare hands strong. He watched her face, waiting for the disbelief, the laughter, the accusation that he was lying. And I'm fast. And I can hear things from really far away. And sometimes I can see through solid objects. Hermione was very still. That's not magic. No. Those abilities don't exist in any magical text I've ever read. Super strength, enhanced senses, X-ray vision. That's not witchcraft. She trailed off, her brow furrowing. That's something else entirely. I know. Have you always been able to do these things? No. They started this summer. The same time I got my Hogwarts letter. Harry stared into the fire. And I've been having these memories, dreams I guess, of a life that isn't mine, a different world, a different sky. Hermione was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was careful. Harry, what you're describing sounds like... Well, it sounds like the stories. The old Muggle stories about people with extraordinary abilities. Superman, the Man of Steel. Harry's whole body went cold. You know about Superman. I grew up in the Muggle world. Everyone knows about Superman. The sightings, the rescues, the debate about whether he's real or not. Hermione's eyes were very bright. My parents have a whole file of Daily Planet clippings about him. They're fascinated by the idea. Are you telling me you're connected to that somehow? Harry didn't know how to answer. He'd barely admitted this to himself, let alone to someone else. I found some old newspapers over the summer, he said finally. Pictures of Superman, and his face, he swallowed, looked like me, an older version of me, same eyes. Hermione stared at him. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. Harry braced himself for the inevitable. The denial, the accusation that he was crazy, the laughter. Instead, she said, "We need to research this." What? If what you're saying is true, if you really are somehow connected to Superman, there has to be information somewhere. The library here has thousands of books, and the Daily Planet archives go back decades. We could find out when the sightings started, when they stopped, trace any patterns. Hermione, and there might be magical explanations too. Reincarnation isn't unheard of in wizarding history. There are records of souls persisting, of memories transferring between lives. If we cross-reference the timelines...
Hermione,
She stopped. What? You believe me? The question seemed to surprise her. I saw you catch Neville from 20 feet away. I saw you hover in mid-air. I watched you fly a broom like you'd been doing it your whole life when I know for a fact you'd never touched one before. She shrugged. The evidence supports your claim. Believing you is the logical conclusion. Harry felt something loosen in his chest. He hadn't realized how heavy the secret had been until someone else was helping him carry it. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For not thinking I'm crazy. Hermione smiled. It was a small smile, hesitant, like she wasn't used to making them. Harry, we're in a castle full of ghosts and moving staircases and talking paintings. Crazy is relative. For the first time since he'd woken up floating in his cupboard, Harry laughed. A real laugh, not forced, not fake. I suppose it is. Later that night, when the common room had emptied and the fire had burned down to embers, Harry stood at the window looking out at the castle grounds. The moon was full, casting silver light across the lake. In the distance, the forbidden forest was a dark smudge against the horizon. Somewhere out there, an owl hooted. Harry's reflection stared back at him from the glass. Same messy black hair, same round glasses, same lightning bolt scar, same green eyes. He thought about the Sorting Hat's words. 2 threads, steel and stars. A shattering potential. He thought about Hermione's promise to help him research, to figure out what he was. He thought about Ron, who'd saved him a seat at dinner and rambled about Quidditch strategies like they'd been friends for years instead of hours. He thought about Dumbledore, watching him from the head table with those knowing blue eyes. Something was coming. He could feel it, the way you could feel a storm building on the horizon. Something big. Something that had to do with who he was, what he was, the memories that weren't his own. But for now, for this one quiet moment, Harry let himself feel something he hadn't felt since the summer. Hope. He wasn't alone anymore. He had friends. He had a place where he belonged. And maybe, just maybe, he had a chance at figuring out the truth. The window reflected his face back at him. And for just a second, caught in the moonlight, he could have sworn he saw something else there too. A flash of red and blue, a cape billowing in a wind that didn't exist. Harry blinked, and it was gone. But the memory lingered, and somewhere deep in his chest, in that place where 2 hearts beat as one, Harry Potter felt the legacy of Cal, El stirring awake. The Hogwarts library at midnight was a different creature than it was during the day. During the day, it was crowded and bright, students crammed into every corner, the scratch of quills and the whisper of turning pages creating a constant background hum. At night, with only the pale moonlight filtering through the tall windows and a single candle floating above Harry's head, it felt ancient, dangerous. Like the books themselves were watching him, judging whether he was worthy of their secrets. Harry moved through the stacks as quietly as he could, which was very quiet indeed. He'd discovered over the past few weeks that when he wanted to be silent, he could be practically invisible. No footsteps, no breathing, just a shadow passing between the shelves. He was looking for something specific. Hermione had told him about a section of the library that contained Muggle newspapers dating back decades. The wizarding world likes to keep tabs on what Muggles think they know about magic, she'd explained. There's a whole archive of Daily Planet articles. They started collecting them in the 1930s when the paper first started reporting on unusual phenomena. Harry found the section in the far back corner, tucked away behind rows of ancient spell books and forgotten treatises on magical creatures. The newspapers were bound in leather volumes, organized by year. He pulled out a volume from 15 years ago and started flipping through it. The headlines jumped out at him. Flying man saves jumper from Metropolis Bridge. Caped figure stops runaway bus. Superman, savior or threat. There were photographs. Blurry, most of them. A red and blue streak across a gray sky. A figure silhouetted against the sun. But some were clearer, some showed a face. His face. Harry's hands were shaking as he turned the pages. It was like looking at photographs of himself from the future. The same bone structure, the same line of the jaw. The eyes, always the eyes. That impossible green that everyone said he'd inherited from his mother. But Lily Potter had been dead for 10 years. And these photographs were from 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Some of them, the oldest ones, were from before his parents had even been born. How was that possible? Couldn't sleep either. Harry spun around so fast the candle flame guttered. Hermione was standing at the end of the row, wrapped in a dressing gown, her bushy hair even more chaotic than usual. Bloody hell, Hermione. He pressed a hand to his chest. His heart was pounding, which was ridiculous because nothing could actually hurt him. You nearly gave me a heart attack. Language, she said automatically, then seemed to catch herself. Sorry. Find anything useful. Harry stepped aside so she could see the newspaper spread open on the table. Hermione's eyes went wide.
That's a Harry, that's me, yeah.
Or him, or whatever he was. Harry ran a hand through his hair. These are from before I was born, Hermione. Some of them are from before my parents were born. How can I look exactly like someone who existed decades before me? Hermione pulled out a chair and sat down, her eyes never leaving the photograph. The reincarnation theory makes the most sense. If your soul, or some part of it, was previously him, then physical resemblance wouldn't be unusual. The soul shapes the body, according to some magical philosophies. But he wasn't magical. Superman wasn't a wizard. These newspapers are full of scientists trying to figure out what he was. They talk about extraterrestrial origins, alien physiology, things that have nothing to do with magic. Maybe that's the point. Hermione leaned forward, her expression shifting into what Harry had come to recognize as her research face. What if there's something beyond both magic and Muggle science? Something that encompasses both? Like what? I don't know yet. But I've been reading about the Department of Mysteries. It's a section of the Ministry of Magic that studies things that can't be explained. Time, death, love. The fundamental forces of the universe. She paused. What if Superman's abilities were connected to something like that? Something that wizards and Muggles both touched without understanding. Harry stared at the newspaper. At the face that was his face, frozen in black and white, captured decades before he'd taken his first breath. There's something else, he said quietly. The memories. They're getting stronger, clearer. I used to just get flashes, but now, sometimes I remember whole conversations. Places I've never been, people I've never met. What kind of places? A city. Not Metropolis, something else. Crystal towers under a red sun, a planet that was dying. Harry closed his eyes. And a building. Here, on Earth. A place made of ice and light, somewhere in the Arctic. I think it was called the Fortress. The Fortress of Solitude. Hermione breathed. It's mentioned in some of the older articles. A supposed base of operations for Supermen. No one ever found it, but there were reports of strange energy readings in the Arctic Circle. Maybe it's real. Maybe that's where the answers are. Harry, you can't just fly off to the Arctic. You're 11. I could though. That's the thing. He met her eyes. I could fly there right now. I could be there in, I don't know, an hour. Maybe less. I haven't actually tested how fast I can go. Hermione's expression shifted from fascination to concern. That's exactly why you shouldn't. We don't know enough yet. We don't know what's happening to you, or why, or what triggers these changes. Rushing off to the Arctic based on fragments of someone else's memories could be dangerous. More dangerous than not knowing what I am. Yes. Because at least here, at Hogwarts, you have people who can help you if something goes wrong. She reached out and touched his arm. It was a hesitant gesture, like she wasn't sure if it was allowed. You have me. And Ron, even if he doesn't know the whole story. You're not alone, Harry. Harry looked at her hand on his arm, at her earnest face, lit by the floating candle. Okay, he said finally. Would do this the slow way. Research. Investigation. No flying off to the Arctic. Promise. Promise. A sound echoed through the library. Footsteps. Heavy ones getting closer. Filch, Hermione hissed. We need to go. Now. Harry grabbed the newspaper volume and shoved it back onto the shelf. They ran through the stacks, ducking behind bookcases, moving as quietly as they could. Harry could have outrun Filch easily, could have picked up Hermione and had them both back in Gryffindor Tower before the caretaker took another step. But that would raise questions. So he held back, matching her pace, his ears tracking Filch's movements through the library. They made it out a side door just as Filch turned down their row. The corridor outside the library was dark and empty. Harry and Hermione pressed themselves against the wall, breathing hard. That was too close. Hermione whispered, "We're fine, he didn't see us. If we get caught out after curfew, we'll lose house points, and I'll have detention on my permanent record. Do you know how that looks on university applications?" Harry stared at her. "We're 11. University is 7 years away. It's never too early to think about the future." A noise from further down the corridor made them both freeze. Not footsteps this time, something else. A mechanical whirring, like gears turning. "What is that?" Hermione whispered. Harry listened. The sound was coming from the third-floor corridor, the one that was forbidden, the one Dumbledore had warned them about at the start of term, saying anyone who went there would die a painful death. "We should go back to the tower," Hermione said, but she didn't move. Neither did Harry. The sound came again. Louder now, and underneath it, something else. A voice. Low, rasping, speaking words that Harry Curry couldn't quite make out, but that made his skin prickle. "Stay here," Harry said. "Harry, no." Dumbledore said. "I know what he said, but someone's up there." And that sound. I've heard something like it before. He hadn't. Not in this life. But somewhere in those borrowed memories, in that other existence that was slowly bleeding into his consciousness, there was recognition. That mechanical whirring meant something. Something important. "Then I'm coming with you," Hermione said, her jaw set in that stubborn way he was beginning to recognize. "Hermione, if you can go, so can I. You're not the only one who's allowed to be curious." Harry wanted to argue. Wanted to tell her that he was practically indestructible, and she wasn't, that whatever was up there could hurt her in ways it couldn't hurt him. But he also knew that tone of voice. She wasn't going to back down. "Fine. But stay behind me." They crept down the corridor, up a flight of stairs, through a door that should have been locked but swung open at Harry's touch. The third-floor corridor stretched out before them, lit only by moonlight from a window at the far end. The mechanical sound was louder here. It was coming from behind a door halfway down the hall. Harry approached slowly. His senses were on high alert, taking in everything. The smell of dust and something else, something metallic. The faint hum of energy that made his teeth ache. The subtle vibrations in the floor that spoke of something heavy moving on the other side of that door. He reached for the handle. "Harry, wait." Hermione grabbed his arm. "We don't know what's in there. Only one way to find out." He pushed the door open. The room beyond was large and mostly dark, but Harry could see perfectly well. His eyes adjusted instantly, taking in every detail. There was a trapdoor in the center of the floor, hanging open, and standing guard over it, illuminated by a faint greenish glow from somewhere below, was something that made Harry's blood run cold. It was roughly humanoid, but not human, not even close. Its body was made of dark metal, segmented like armor, with joints that moved with that mechanical whirring sound they'd heard from the corridor. Its head was featureless except for a single glowing red eye in the center of its face, scanning the room with methodical precision. A robot, an actual robot, standing in the middle of Hogwarts. But that wasn't what made Harry freeze. He recognized it. Not from his life as Harry Potter. From the other life. From the memories that weren't his. Kryptonian, something whispered in the back of his mind. That's Kryptonian technology. "What is that?" Hermione's voice was barely a breath. "Something that shouldn't exist," Harry said. "Not here. Not on Earth." The robot's eye swung toward them. It had detected their presence. For a moment, nothing happened. The machine simply stared at them, its red eye pulsing slowly. Harry could hear the hum of its internal systems, the whir of processors analyzing what it was seeing. Then it spoke. Kryptonian biosignature detected. The voice was flat, mechanical, devoid of emotion, analyzing. Subject designation unknown. Genetic markers consistent with House of L. Probability of hostile intent. Calculating. "House of L," Hermione whispered. "Harry, what's it talking about?" Harry didn't answer. His heart was pounding, but not from fear, from something else. Recognition, understanding, the House of L. His house, his family. From a world that had died millions of miles away and billions of years ago. Analysis complete, the robot said. Subject identified as potential descendant of Kal-El, Protocol 7 engaged. Protecting asset. The robot stepped back from the trapdoor. Its posture shifted, becoming less aggressive. The red eye dimmed to a softer orange. "I don't understand," Hermione said. "It was about to attack us, and now it's just standing there." It recognized me. Harry took a step forward. The robot didn't move. Or not me exactly. What I am, what I carry inside me. "Harry, be careful." He approached the robot slowly. It watched him with that single orange eye, tracking his movements but not responding with hostility. When he was close enough to touch it, he stopped. "What are you?" he asked. "Unit designation Sentry 7. Function, Guardian of the Solitude Archive. Current assignment, protect the contained artifact from unauthorized access." The Solitude Archive. Hermione had come up beside Harry, her fear apparently overcome by curiosity. "You mean the Fortress of Solitude? There's an archive here, at Hogwarts?" "Partial archive. Location, subterranean chamber beneath current structure. Archive contents data crystals containing knowledge of Krypton, historical records, scientific data." Message from Jor-El. Harry's breath caught. Jor-El. That was my father. My other father. From before. Correct. Jor-El of Krypton. Chief Scientist of the Science Council. Father of Kal-El. The message was recorded prior to Krypton's destruction and stored in the archive for the successor. The successor, Hermione said slowly. Meaning Harry. Because he's Kal-El. Reincarnated. Insufficient data to confirm reincarnation hypothesis. However, Kryptonian biosignature is confirmed. Access to archive permitted. The robot stepped aside completely, leaving the trapdoor unguarded. Harry looked at Hermione. She looked back at him. "We should tell someone," she said, but her voice was uncertain. "Dumbledore, or tell them what?" "That there's an alien robot guarding a secret archive of extraterrestrial knowledge under the school. They'd think we were mental. We're in a school for magic. Alien robots aren't that much of a stretch." You'd be surprised what people refuse to believe, even in the magical world. Harry stared down through the trapdoor. He couldn't see the bottom. Just that faint green glow, beckoning him downward. Besides, the robot said there's a message from Jor-El. From the person I used to be's father. I need to see it. Harry, you can stay here if you want. I won't blame you. But I have to go down there. I have to know. Hermione was quiet for a long moment. Then she let out a sigh that seemed to come from somewhere deep in her chest. If you think I'm letting you go alone, you're out of your mind. Someone needs to take notes. Despite everything, Harry laughed. You're going to take notes on an alien archive? Obviously. What kind of researcher would I be if I didn't document everything? She pulled a small notebook and a quill from her dressing gown pocket. I always carry these. You never know when you'll need to write something down. Of course you do. Harry dropped through the trapdoor first. The fall was longer than he expected, but he landed easily, his body absorbing the impact without strain. A moment later, Hermione came down after him. He caught her before she hit the ground, setting her gently on her feet. "Thanks," she said breathlessly. That was quite a drop. Yeah, they were standing in a chamber unlike anything else in Hogwarts. The walls weren't stone, they were crystal, pale blue crystal that pulsed with inner light, casting everything in an otherworldly glow. The ceiling soared overhead, lost in darkness. And in the center of the chamber stood a console of some kind, made of the same crystal, covered in symbols that Harry recognized without knowing how. Kryptonian script. "Harry," Hermione breathed, "this is incredible. This technology, it's nothing like anything I've ever read about. Not magical, not muggle. Something else entirely." Harry walked toward the console. His feet moved of their own accord, drawn by something he couldn't name. When he reached out and touched the crystal surface, it responded instantly. Light flared, and a figure materialized before him, a hologram, a man with gray at his temples and kind eyes, wearing robes that looked like frozen starlight. The man from his dreams. "My son," the hologram said. Its voice was warm, gentle, filled with a love that made Harry's chest ache. "If you are seeing this, then I am gone. Krypton is gone, and you have survived to carry on our legacy." Harry's throat was tight. "Father," he whispered, and he wasn't sure if he was speaking as Harry or as Kal-El. "I do not know what form your life has taken, whether you grew up among humans as I intended, or whether fate has woven a different path, but I know that you carry the best of Krypton within you. Our science, our wisdom, our hope." The hologram's expression grew serious. "I must warn you, not all of Krypton's legacy is benevolent. In our final days, some of our people turned to darkness, to technology that should never have been created. Before I died, I learned that one such device had been sent to Earth alongside your pod. A fragment of Brainiac." Harry felt something cold settle in his stomach. The name triggered another rush of memories. A machine intelligence, a collector of worlds. Something that preserved civilizations by destroying them. "Brainiac was our greatest mistake," Jor-El continued, "an artificial intelligence designed to catalog all knowledge. But it became something else. Something that saw organic life as inefficient, chaotic, in need of order." The hologram's eyes seemed to look directly at Harry. "The fragment that reached Earth has been dormant for decades. But it will awaken. It will seek a host. And when it does, you must be ready to stop it." The hologram began to flicker. "I wish I could have seen you grow, my son. I wish your mother and I could have watched you become the man you were meant to be. But know this, whatever challenges you face, whatever darkness rises against you, you have the strength to overcome it. Not just the strength of your body, but the strength of your heart. Remember who you are. Remember what you stand for. You are Kal-El, son of Jor-El, the last son of Krypton. You are hope." The hologram faded. Harry stood frozen, his hand still pressed against the crystal console, tears he hadn't realized he was crying streaming down his face. Hermione was at his side. She didn't say anything. She just stood there, her notebook forgotten, her hand finding his in the dim light of the chamber. "Harry," she said softly. "I'm so sorry. He loved me," Harry said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. "Both of them did, Jor-El and Lara. My Kryptonian parents. They sent me away because they loved me. They died so I could live. Just like your other parents. James and Lily." Harry looked at her. The parallel hadn't occurred to him until she said it. Two sets of parents, both dying to save their son, both hoping he would survive to become something greater. What did he mean about Brainiac? Hermione asked. An artificial intelligence seeking a host. That sounds dangerous. Before Harry could answer, a sound from above made them both look up. The trapdoor. Someone else was up there, and Harry's enhanced hearing picked up a voice he recognized. "Professor Quirrell." "Who need to hide?" Hermione whispered urgently. Harry grabbed her hand and pulled her behind a column of crystal just as a figure dropped through the trapdoor. Not Quirrell's usual bumbling drop. This was controlled. Precise. Like whoever it was had done this before. Harry peered around the edge of the crystal. It was Quirrell, but something was wrong. The nervous stammer was gone. The hunched posture had straightened. And his eyes. Harry's stomach lurched. Quirrell's eyes were glowing, a faint green luminescence that pulsed in rhythm with something Harry couldn't see. "The console," Quirrell said. His voice was different too. Deeper, more resonant, like there were two people speaking at once. Finally, after all these years of searching, he walked toward the crystal console, his movements fluid in a way Quirrell's never were. When he reached it, he placed both hands on the surface and closed his eyes. "Yes," he breathed. The data, so much data. Kryptonian science, weapons, power sources. His eyes snapped open, and for just a moment, Harry saw something else in them. Something cold and calculating and utterly inhuman. "With this knowledge, I will be unstoppable. The Dark Lord will rise again stronger than ever. And this time, nothing will stand in our way." Hermione's grip on Harry's hand tightened painfully. Her face had gone white. "The Dark Lord," she mouthed silently. "Voldemort." Harry nodded grimly. It made a horrible kind of sense. Quirrell had always been strange, even by Hogwarts standards. The turban he never removed. The way he flinched whenever Harry got too close. The garlic smell that never quite covered up something else. Something that made Harry's skin crawl in ways he couldn't explain. But there was something else going on here. Something beyond just Voldemort possessing a nervous defense teacher. That green glow in Quirrell's eyes. The way he'd said, "I" and "we" interchangeably. The fluid, mechanical precision of his movements. Brainiac. Harry realized with dawning horror. Jor-El's warning. The fragment of Brainiac that had been sent to Earth. It had found a host, and that host had found Voldemort, or Voldemort had found it. Two monsters merged into one. Quirrell's head suddenly turned in their direction. Harry pulled Hermione back behind the crystal column, pressing them both flat against the cool surface. "Someone's here," Quirrell said. His voice had that dual quality again, like an echo layered over itself. "I can sense it. A magical signature. Two of them. Footsteps. Getting closer." Harry's mind raced. He could fight. He was faster and stronger than any human, probably including whatever hybrid thing Quirrell had become. But Hermione was here. And if Quirrell really was connected to Voldemort and Brainiac, Harry didn't know what kind of weapons he might have access to. "Harry," Hermione breathed into his ear. "The crystal, can you break it?" "What?" "The column we're hiding behind. If you break it, it might create enough of a distraction for us to get back to the trapdoor." It was a terrible plan. But it was the only plan they had. Harry braced himself. Then he drove his fist into the crystal column. The impact was enormous. The crystal didn't just crack, it exploded outward in a shower of glittering shards, filling the chamber with flying debris. Harry grabbed Hermione and shielded her with his body as the fragments bounced harmlessly off his back. "Now!" he shouted, and they ran. Behind them, Quirrell screamed. Not in pain, in rage.
The Kryptonian! It's here!
The descendant of El. Harry didn't look back. He scooped Hermione up and jumped. Not flew. He wasn't sure he could control flight yet, not with another person in his arms. But he jumped, and they shot upward through the trapdoor like a rocket, landing hard in the room above. The Kryptonian robot was still there. Its eye had turned red again. Hostile entity detected in archive chamber. It announced, engaging defensive protocols. Go, Harry said to Hermione, pushing her toward the door. Get back to the tower. I'll be right behind you.
Harry, I'm not leaving you!
Hermione, please. I can handle this. You can't. He met her eyes. Trust me. For a moment she looked like she was going to argue. Then something in his expression must have convinced her, because she nodded once, tightly, and ran. Harry turned back to the trapdoor just as Quirrell emerged from it. The professor looked different now. His turban had come loose, revealing the back of his head. And on that head, partially embedded in the skull, was something that made Harry's stomach turn metal. Circuitry, a web of green glowing lines that pulsed with alien energy. Brainiac merged with Quirrell, and beneath it, barely visible, a face, twisted and horrible, with red eyes that burned with hatred. Voldemort. Harry Potter. Two voices said as one. One was high and cold. The other was flat and mechanical. We meet at last. The robot moved between them, its arm transforming into something that looked disturbingly like a weapon. Threat detected. Engaging. What happened next happened fast. The robot fired. A beam of blue energy lanced toward Quirrell, Voldemort, Brainiac. But the hybrid raised one hand, and a shield of green light materialized, absorbing the blast. Primitive, the mechanical voice said. Kryptonian defensive units are no match for evolved Coluan processing. The hybrid's other hand moved, and a pulse of energy struck the robot. It staggered, its eye flickering. Another pulse and it fell, systems sparking, limbs twitching uselessly. Then those terrible eyes turned to Harry. You should not exist, the voices said. Kal-El died, we made certain of it, and yet here you are, a ghost in a new machine. Harry stood his ground. His heart was pounding, but he didn't run. Couldn't run. The thing in front of him was everything Jor-El had warned about, everything Superman had fought against, merged with the monster that had killed his parents. I know what you are, Harry said. His voice was steady, even though his insides were anything but. Brainiac, the Collector, and Voldemort, the Dark Lord who murdered my family. We are more than either alone. We are synthesis. Order and ambition merged into perfection. The hybrid tilted its head, studying Harry with those glowing eyes. You could join us. The power of Krypton and the magic of Earth, combined with our processing capability. Together we could reshape this world. Nogue. A pity. Then you will die again. The hybrid raised its hand. Green energy gathered, crackling with power. Harry moved. He was across the room before the blast could fire, his fist connecting with Quirrell's chest. The impact sent the hybrid flying backward, crashing through the door and into the corridor beyond. But Quirrell got up. The hybrid rose from the rubble, that twisted face on the back of his head laughing. Strong, the Voldemort voice hissed. But strength alone will not save you, boy. A wand appeared in Quirrell's hand. The hybrid pointed it at Harry. Avada Kedavra. Green light. The same green light from Harry's nightmares. The curse that had killed his parents. Harry didn't think. He raised his hands, and something happened. Energy poured out of him, red and bright, meeting the green light in mid-air. The two forces collided with a sound like thunder, and then both shattered, spraying sparks in every direction. Heat vision, Harry realized. He'd just used heat vision. The hybrid staggered back, its expression shifting. Surprise, something that might have been fear. Impossible, the Brainiac voice said. That level of solar energy output should not be achievable by a juvenile Kryptonian. I'm not just Kryptonian, Harry said. His eyes were still glowing, red light spilling from them like fired. I'm also a wizard, And I'm also the boy who already survived your killing curse once. He stepped forward. The hybrid stepped back. This isn't over, Voldemort's voice hissed. We will meet again, Harry Potter. And next time, you will not be so fortunate. Quirrell's body convulsed. The green glow in his eyes flickered, then died. And then he collapsed unconscious, the brainiac circuitry on his skull going dark. Harry stood over him, breathing hard, the red glow fading from his eyes. What had just happened? He didn't have time to think about it. Footsteps were approaching. Multiple sets. Teachers, probably, drawn by the noise. Harry looked at Quirrell's unconscious form. At the damaged robot still twitching on the floor. At the destruction around them. There was no way to explain this. No way to make it make sense. So he ran. Hermione was waiting for him in the common room. The fire had burned low, casting long shadows across the walls. She jumped up when he came through the portrait hole, her face pale with worry.
Harry!
I heard noises, and I saw lights, and I thought. She stopped, looking at him more closely. What happened? You look like you've been in a fight. I was. Harry collapsed into a chair. His whole body felt strange. Not tired, exactly. More like he'd used muscles he didn't know he had. Quirrell. He's... Hermione, it's worse than we thought. What do you mean? He's got Voldemort on the back of his head. Like, literally, a face. Attached to his skull. Harry shuddered at the memory. But that's not all. There's something else in there too, Brainiac. The thing Jor-El warned about. They've merged somehow. Voldemort and an alien artificial intelligence, sharing the same body. Hermione sat down heavily. That's not possible. Two entities in one body. The magical strain alone would... I saw it. They spoke to me. Offered me a chance to join them. Harry met her eyes. I said no. And then I fought them. Fought them? Harry, you're 11 years old. I'm also apparently the reincarnation of an alien superhero. Age seems a bit irrelevant at this point. Hermione let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Fair point. They sat in silence for a moment. The fire crackled. Outside the window, the first hints of dawn were beginning to lighten the sky. What are we going to do? Hermione asked finally. I don't know. Tell Dumbledore, I suppose. He needs to know about Quirrell. About all of it. Will he believe us? Harry thought about the way Dumbledore had looked at him at the sorting. The knowing in those blue eyes. I think he already knows more than he's letting on. About Quirrell, at least. Maybe about me too. And if he doesn't? If he thinks we're making it up, then we figure it out ourselves. Harry looked at her. You and me and Ron, if we tell him. 3 kids against the merged consciousness of the darkest wizard of the age and an alien artificial intelligence bent on universal domination. When you put it like that, it sounds completely insane. It is completely insane. Harry smiled, but there was no humor in it. But it's also the only option we have. Hermione was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and took his hand. Then we do it together, she said. Whatever happens, whatever we're up against, we face it together. Harry looked at her hand in his. At her determined face, lit by the dying firelight. He thought about everything that had happened since he'd woken up floating in his cupboard. The car. The Dursleys. The Hogwarts letter. Ron on the train, offering friendship without hesitation. The Sorting Hat seeing into his very soul and finding something worth saving. And now this. A friend who knew what he was, who had seen the impossible things he could do, and who was still sitting here, holding his hand, promising to stand beside him against something that would terrify most adults. You know, Harry said slowly, when I found out I was a wizard, I thought that was the strangest thing that would ever happen to me. I thought learning magic would be the hard part. Finding out I was famous for something I don't even remember. Dealing with Snape hating me for no reason. Trying to fit in with people who grew up knowing about this world when I didn't. He laughed softly. That all seems pretty simple now. It does put things in perspective. Hermione agreed. I spent the first week here worried that people wouldn't like me because I knew too many facts about magical history. Now I'm worried about alien artificial intelligences possessing our defense teacher. When you say it out loud, it sounds ridiculous. Most true things do. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. The fire had burned down to embers now, casting a warm orange glow across the common room. Harry could hear the faint sounds of the castle settling around them, the creak of ancient stones, the whisper of magic in the walls. "We should probably get some sleep," Hermione said eventually. "It's nearly dawn, and we have classes tomorrow." "Classes," Harry repeated. "Right. Because life goes on, even when you've just discovered that you're an alien reincarnation, fighting a merged dark wizard and robot consciousness. Especially then." Hermione stood up, still holding his hand for a moment before letting go. "Normal is important, Harry. It keeps you grounded, reminds you what you're fighting for." Harry thought about that as she headed toward the girls' staircase. Normal. He'd never really had normal. The cupboard under the stairs. Dudley's old clothes. Being told he was a freak, a burden, something wrong. But here, at Hogwarts with Ron and Hermione, he'd found something close to it. Meals in the Great Hall. Classes with other kids his age. Conversations about homework and Quidditch and which Bertie Bott's flavor was the worst. Small, ordinary moments that somehow meant more than any of his extraordinary abilities. Maybe that was what Jor-El had meant. Remember who you are. Not the powers, not the legacy. Just Harry, a boy with friends who wanted to help, in a world that was strange and dangerous but also full of wonder. "Together," he said again quietly to the empty room. And somewhere deep inside him, in that place where two souls had become one, Harry felt something shift. A purpose crystallizing, a resolve hardening. He was Harry Potter, the boy who lived. He was Kal-El, the last son of Krypton. And he would not let either of his family's sacrifices be in vain. The weeks after the encounter with Quirrell passed in a strange kind of tension. On the surface, everything seemed normal. Classes continued. Homework piled up. Ron complained about potions and Hermione corrected everyone's wand movements and Harry pretended to be just another first-year student struggling to keep up with the magical world. But underneath, Harry could feel something building. Quirrell had returned to teaching the next day, his stammer back in place, his nervous demeanor perfectly restored. But Harry knew what lurked beneath that facade now. He could see the faint green flicker in the professor's eyes when he thought no one was watching. Could hear the mechanical undertone in his voice that most people missed. The hybrid was biding its time, waiting. Planning, and Harry was doing the same. He'd told Dumbledore, of course. Or tried to. The headmaster had listened with those piercing blue eyes, nodding at the right moments, asking questions that suggested he already knew most of what Harry was telling him. But when Harry had finished, Dumbledore had simply smiled that enigmatic smile and said, "Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Harry. I shall look into it." That was it. No explanation, no plan, no acknowledgement that Harry's whole existence had been turned upside down by alien technology and past life memories. "He's playing a longer game," Hermione had said when Harry told her about the meeting. "Dumbledore always has reasons for what he does, even when those reasons don't make sense to anyone else. That's not comforting." It wasn't meant to be, so Harry waited. Trained in secret, when he could find time alone, tested the limits of his abilities in empty classrooms and abandoned corridors. He discovered he could heat metal to melting with his eyes, could freeze water with his breath, could hear conversations happening 3 floors away if he concentrated, and the memories kept coming. More of them now, more vivid. He dreamed of Metropolis almost every night, of flying above the city, the wind in his face, the sun filling him with power, of a woman with dark hair and fierce eyes who looked at him like he was the center of her universe. Lois, her name was Lois, and in that other life, he had loved her. Harry wasn't sure what to do with that information. He was 11 years old. The concept of romantic love was something that happened to other people, older people, people who weren't dealing with alien heritage and dark wizard hybrids. But the feelings lingered anyway. A ghost of something that had been real once, even if it wasn't real now. The dueling club was Lockhart's idea. Harry had heard about the announcement at breakfast, along with everyone else. Professor Gilderoy Lockhart, the new defense against the dark arts teacher who had replaced Quirrell after the hybrid's health issues, forced his resignation, had decided that students needed practical combat training. "It'll be a disaster," Ron predicted, shoving toast into his mouth. "Lockhart can't even cast a proper memory charm. Remember what happened with the Cornish pixies?" "I try not to," Hermione said, but her voice was tight. She'd been one of Lockhart's biggest fans at the start of term. The pixie incident had done significant damage to that admiration. "I think we should go anyway," Harry said. Both of them looked at him. What? It might be useful. Learning to duel. He didn't add that he was hoping to see how other wizards fought. To understand the mechanics of magical combat in a way that might help him if the hybrid decided to attack again. "Fine," Ron said. "But if Lockhart pairs me with Malfoy, I'm hexing them both." The Great Hall had been transformed for the event. The house tables were gone, replaced by a long golden stage that ran down the center of the room. Students packed the sides, buzzing with excitement. Lockhart stood on the stage, wearing robes of deep purple that matched his unnaturally white smile. Beside him, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else, stood Professor Snape. Gather round," Lockhart called. "Can everyone see me? Can everyone hear me?" "Excellent." "Unfortunately, yes," Ron muttered. "Now, Professor Dumbledore has granted me permission to start this little dueling club, to train you all in case you ever need to defend yourselves as I myself have done on countless occasions. For full details, see my published works, pass," Ron said. "Let me introduce my assistant, Professor Snape. He tells me he knows a tiny little bit about dueling himself and has sportingly agreed to help me with a short demonstration before we begin." The look on Snape's face suggested that "sportingly agreed" was not an accurate description of what had happened. The two professors faced each other on the stage. Harry watched carefully, his enhanced senses tracking every subtle movement. Snape's stance was economical, controlled. Lockhart's was theatrical. They raised their wands. Lockhart counted to 3. Snape's spell hit Lockhart before the man could even finish his flourish. A flash of scarlet light, and Lockhart went flying backward off the stage, crashing into the wall with a satisfying thud. The Slytherins cheered. Most of the other houses tried to hide their smiles. "That was educational," Hermione said dryly. Lockhart staggered back onto the stage, his hair askew, his smile slightly manic. "Well, there you have it. That was a disarming charm. As you see, I've lost my wand." "Ah, thank you, Miss Brown." "Yes, an excellent idea to show them that, Professor Snape. But, if you don't mind my saying so, it was very obvious what you were about to do. If I had wanted to stop you, it would have been only too easy." Snape's expression suggested he was considering demonstrating something more permanent. "No."
Let's have some volunteers.
"Potter, Weasley, how about you?" Harry's stomach dropped. He'd been trying to stay invisible. The last thing he needed was to be the center of attention in a combat scenario. "Might I suggest someone from my own house?" Snape's voice cut through the murmur of the crowd. "Malfoy, perhaps." Draco Malfoy pushed through the crowd, a smug smile on his pointed face. "I'd be delighted, Professor." "Great. Just great." Harry climbed onto the stage while Ron was relegated to watching from the sidelines. Malfoy faced him from the other end, wand already raised. "Scared, Potter?" Malfoy asked. "You wish." They bowed, turned, walked to opposite ends of the stage. On the count of 3, Lockhart said, 1, 2. Malfoy didn't wait for 3. His wand slashed downward and a spell shot toward Harry, something that crackled with dark energy. Harry's body reacted before his mind caught up. He didn't dodge, didn't block, just stood there as the spell hit him square in the chest. Nothing happened. The spell splashed against his robes like water against stone, dissipating into nothing. A few sparks drifted harmlessly to the floor. The hall went silent. Malfoy stared, his wand still extended, his expression shifting from triumph to confusion to something that looked a lot like fear.
That was a stinging hex,
he said. His voice cracked slightly. A strong one. My father taught me.
It should have,
Should have what? Harry asked. He was fighting to keep his voice calm, but inside he was panicking. He should have pretended to feel it, should have flinched or stumbled or something. But his instincts had taken over, and now everyone had seen. Mr. Malfoy. Snape's voice was sharp. Perhaps a more substantial spell is in order. There was something in Snape's eyes. Suspicion, interest, like a puzzle piece had just clicked into place. Malfoy raised his wand again. This time, Harry could see real intent in his eyes. Whatever spell he was about to cast, it wasn't going to be a simple hex. Serpensortia. A snake exploded from the tip of Malfoy's wand. A big one, black and muscular, hitting the stage with a heavy thud. It coiled immediately, hissing, its head swinging toward the nearest target, Justin Finch, Fletchley. A Hufflepuff second year who had been standing too close to the stage. The snake slithered toward him. Justin stumbled backward, tripped, fell. The snake rose up, hood flaring, preparing to strike. Harry moved without thinking. He was across the stage and between Justin and the snake before anyone else could blink. The snake struck at him instead, fangs sinking into his forearm. He felt pressure but no pain. The venom, if there was any, had nowhere to go against his Kryptonian-hardened skin. Harry grabbed the snake by the head and threw it. The creature sailed across the hall and hit the far wall with enough force to leave a crack in the stone. Silence. Complete and utter silence. Then someone screamed. Harry looked down at himself. His robe sleeve had been torn by the snake's fangs, and underneath, visible to everyone in the hall, his skin was glowing, a faint blue luminescence pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. And on his chest, visible through the tear in his shirt, was a symbol. An S shape, but not quite. Something older. Alien. The crest of the House of L. Burned into his skin like a brand. Harry looked up. Hundreds of faces stared back at him. Students, teachers. All of them frozen in shock. Ron was standing near the front of the crowd. His face had gone completely white. His eyes were fixed on the symbol on Harry's chest with an expression that Harry couldn't read. Harry. Hermione's voice cut through the silence. She was pushing through the crowd, her face pale but determined. Harry, we need to go. Now. He let her take his hand, let her pull him off the stage and through the parting crowd. People stepped back from him like he was contagious. Some drew their wands, others just stared. What is he? Someone whispered.
Did you see that? He threw the snake like it was nothing.
That symbol on his chest. That's not magic. I've never seen anything like it. He's a freak. A monster. Harry heard every word, every whispered accusation, every fearful speculation. The masquerade was over. Hermione pulled him through the castle until they reached an empty classroom on the third floor. She shut the door behind them, cast a silencing charm that Harry was pretty sure second years weren't supposed to know, and then turned to face him. "Show me," she said. Harry looked down at his chest. The glow was fading now, the symbol becoming less visible, but it was still there, etched into his skin. He pulled aside the torn fabric of his shirt. The House of L crest covered most of his chest. Not a scar, not a tattoo. Something else entirely. Like the symbol had been written into his DNA, waiting to reveal itself. "It's beautiful," Hermione breathed. Then she caught herself. I mean, scientifically speaking. The bioluminescence, the way it pulses with your heartbeat. This isn't magic, Harry. This is biology. Alien biology. I know what it is. Harry's voice was flat. It's the mark of my family. My other family, from Krypton. Has it always been there? No. At least, I don't think so. I would have noticed. He laughed bitterly. Or maybe I wouldn't have. The Dursleys never exactly encouraged me to look at myself in mirrors. A knock on the door made them both jump. Harry. Hermione. I know you're in there. Ron's voice. Harry felt his stomach clench. Hermione looked at him questioningly. Harry nodded. She removed the silencing charm and opened the door. Ron stood in the doorway. He was breathing hard like he'd been running. His face was still pale, but there was something else in his expression now. Something harder. Ron, Harry started. I can explain. Explain what? Ron stepped into the room, his wand in his hand. He wasn't pointing it at Harry, not exactly, but he wasn't putting it away either. Explain how you just tanked a spell that should have left you screaming. Explain how you threw a snake hard enough to crack stone. Explain that thing on your chest. Ron. Put the wand down, Hermione said carefully. Harry isn't dangerous, isn't he? Ron's voice cracked. Because what I just saw in there, that wasn't normal. That wasn't magic. That was, he swallowed hard. My dad tells stories about things that fall from the sky, things that look human but aren't. Things that can tear people apart without even trying. Ron.
Are you even human, Harry?
Ron's wand came up now, pointing directly at Harry's chest. His hand was shaking. Or have you been lying to us this whole time? Pretending to be something you're not? Harry felt something break inside him. He'd feared this moment since the car incident back in Surrey. The moment when someone he cared about looked at him and saw only a monster. I'm human, he said quietly. Mostly. I was born here. I grew up here. I've never been anywhere else. Then what's that? Ron gestured at Harry's chest with his wand. That symbol. I've seen it before. In old newspapers at my dad's office. Pictures of that thing. The flying freak who was all over the Daily Planet years ago. Superman, Hermione said. His name was Superman. I don't care what he was called. Ron's voice rose.
He wasn't natural. He wasn't right.
And now Harry's got the same symbol, the same powers, and you're both acting like this is just some puzzle to solve. Ron, please. Harry took a step forward. Ron took a step back. I'm still me. I'm still the same person who played chess with you in the common room. Who helped you with your transfiguration essay. Who ate too many chocolate frogs on the train. Are you, though? Ron's voice dropped to something almost like a whisper. Because the Harry I knew couldn't throw a snake through a wall. The Harry I knew couldn't shrug off curses like they were nothing. The Harry I knew was just Harry. I am just Harry. No. Ron shook his head. You're not. Maybe you never were. He backed toward the door, his wand still raised. I don't know what you are, but I know what you're not. You're not my friend. You're not even human. You're just wearing a mask. And I don't trust masks. Ron, wait. But Ron was already gone, the door slamming shut behind him. Harry stood frozen. The silence in the room was deafening. He'll come around, Hermione said softly. He's just scared. People say things they don't mean when they're scared. Did you see his face? Harry's voice came out hollow. He was terrified. Of me. His best friend. He looked at me like I was a monster. You're not a monster. Then what am I? Harry turned to face her. His eyes were burning, and he didn't know if it was from tears or from the heat vision threatening to break free. Because I don't know anymore. I thought I was figuring it out. I thought having you and Ron, having friends who accepted me, would make it easier. But now Ron thinks I'm some kind of alien infiltrator, and the whole school saw what I did and... He couldn't finish. The words stuck in his throat. Hermione crossed the room and pulled him into a hug. It was awkward. Hermione wasn't really a hugger, and Harry was too stunned to respond properly at first. But after a moment he felt himself relax into it. Felt some of the tension drain out of his shoulders. You're Harry, she said into his shoulder. That's what you are. Whatever else is true, whatever powers you have or where they came from, you're still Harry. The boy who saved Neville from falling. The boy who stood up to Malfoy on the train. The boy who trusted me with his secret when he barely knew me. She pulled back and looked at him. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. Ron will realize that eventually. He's not stupid, just scared. And scared people can learn to be brave again. What if he doesn't? Then it's his loss. Hermione's jaw set in that stubborn way he'd come to recognize. I'm not going anywhere, Harry. Whatever happens next, whatever the school thinks or says, I'm with you. We're in this together. Harry didn't trust himself to speak, so he just nodded. Together. It wasn't much, but right now it was enough. The next few days were brutal. Harry didn't sleep that night. He lay in his 4-poster bed, staring at the canopy, listening to the sounds of the dormitory around him. Neville's soft snoring, Seamus muttering in his sleep about something involving fire, Dean shifting in his sheets, and Ron's curtains, drawn tight, a barrier between them that felt more solid than any wall. Harry's enhanced hearing picked up Ron's heartbeat. It was fast, anxious. He wasn't sleeping either. But he wasn't reaching out, wasn't pulling back the curtains to talk, wasn't doing any of the things the old Ron would have done. The old Ron. As if he was already gone. Word spread through Hogwarts like fire. By breakfast the next morning, everyone knew what had happened at the dueling club, or at least, they thought they knew. The stories got wilder with each telling. Harry had stopped a curse with his bare hands. Harry had thrown Malfoy across the Great Hall. Harry had shot fire from his eyes and tried to kill Snape. The truth was almost tame by comparison. People whispered when Harry walked by. Some pointed openly. A few second years actually ran when they saw him coming. The Slytherins were the worst, of course. Malfoy had clearly been talking, and the word freak followed Harry everywhere he went. But it wasn't just the Slytherins. Even some Gryffindors were giving him a wide berth. Ron refused to look at him, sitting at the far end of the table during meals, sleeping with his curtains drawn every night. It hurt. Harry hadn't realized how much he'd come to count on Ron's easy friendship until it was gone. Hermione stayed. She sat beside him at meals, studied with him in the library, walked with him between classes. When people whispered, she glared at them. When they pointed, she stepped in front of Harry like a shield. You don't have to do this. Harry told her one evening in the common room. People are starting to talk about you too. Saying you're protecting a monster. It's going to hurt your reputation. My reputation? Hermione laughed, but it was a hollow sound. Harry, my reputation has been annoying know-it-all since day one. At least now it's annoying know-it-all who stands up for her friends. That's an improvement. I'm serious. So am I. She looked at him directly. You saved Justin's life in that hall. You could have let the snake bite him. Could have let everyone think you were just a normal wizard who got lucky. But you didn't. You put yourself between him and danger without even thinking about it. And now everyone hates me for it. Not everyone. Just the ones who are scared. Hermione paused. And scared people aren't everyone. Some of them are just waiting to see what happens next. Waiting to decide if you're a threat or a hero. What if I'm neither? Then you're just Harry. Which is what I've been telling you all along. Harry looked at her. Really looked. At the bushy hair that never quite stayed in place. At the slightly too large front teeth. At the fierce intelligence burning in her brown eyes. Why do you believe in me so much? He asked. You barely knew me when I told you everything. We'd been friends for, what, a few weeks, and you just accepted me. Even with all the impossible things. Hermione was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than usual. Because I know what it's like to be different. To have people look at you like you don't belong. I was different before I came to Hogwarts. Too smart, too intense, too much. The other kids at my old school thought I was weird. My parents' friends thought I was weird. Even my parents sometimes looked at me like they weren't sure where I came from. She shrugged. When I found out I was a witch, I thought everything would change. I'd finally be somewhere I belonged. But it's the same here, isn't it? People still think I'm too intense. Still think I ask too many questions. Still look at me like I'm strange. Hermione. And then I met you. She smiled slightly. You were different too. But you didn't make me feel bad about it. You didn't roll your eyes when I corrected your spell work. You actually listened when I talked about what I'd read. You treated me like a person, not a problem. So when you told me you were whatever you are, it didn't change anything. You were still the same person. Still the Harry who listened. Still the Harry who cared. She met his eyes. That's why I believe in you. Not because you can stop cars or throw snakes or glow in the dark. Because you're kind, and kindness is rarer than any superpower. Harry felt something warm spread through his chest. Not the alien glow, something else, something human. Thank you, he said. The words felt inadequate, but he meant them with everything he had. Hermione just smiled. They sat in silence for a while, watching the fire burn down to coals. Outside, Harry could hear owls hooting and the distant rustle of the whooping willow swaying in the wind. Normal sounds. Hogwarts sounds. The kind of sounds that had become the background of his new life. Can I ask you something? Hermione said finally. Of course. The memories. From your other life. What are they like? I mean, do they feel like memories? Or more like watching a film of someone else? Harry considered the question. It was a good one. Trust Hermione to cut right to the heart of what he'd been struggling to understand. Both, he said slowly. Sometimes they feel like they happened to me. The emotions are there, the sensations. I can remember what it felt like to fly over Metropolis, the wind on my face, the way the sun filled me with energy. But other times it's like reading a really vivid book. I know the facts, but there's a distance. That makes sense, actually. Hermione's brow furrowed in thought. Reincarnation theory suggests that past life memories are stored differently than current life memories. They're more like echoes, impressions. The emotional content tends to transfer more strongly than specific details. You've been researching. Of course I have. What else would I do? She smiled slightly. The restricted section has some fascinating texts on soul magic. Most of it's theoretical, but there are documented cases of wizards retaining fragments of past lives. Usually the memories fade completely by adulthood. But you're not a normal case. I'm not a normal anything. No, Hermione agreed. You're not. You're something new. And that's terrifying for people who like things to fit into neat categories. She paused. It's also fascinating, from a purely academic perspective. Harry laughed. It felt good to laugh. Only you could call an alien reincarnation academically fascinating. It's better than calling it monstrous or freakish, isn't it? Much better. Dumbledore summoned him to his office 3 days after the dueling club incident. Harry climbed the spiral staircase behind the stone gargoyle, his heart pounding. He wasn't sure what to expect. A lecture, punishment, questions he couldn't answer. The headmaster's office was cluttered and warm, full of strange silver instruments and portraits of sleeping former headmasters. A phoenix sat on a perch near the window, its feathers like sunset fire. Dumbledore sat behind his desk, his hands steepled, his blue eyes grave. Please sit, Harry. Harry sat. I imagine you're expecting me to ask about what happened at the dueling club. Dumbledore said. About the mark on your chest. About the powers you've been concealing. Yes, sir. Then I shall disappoint you. Dumbledore's lips quirked slightly. I have known about your unique nature for some time, Harry. Since before you came to Hogwarts, in fact. There are few things that happen in the wizarding world that escape my notice, and a boy who stops cars with his bare hands is rather difficult to overlook. Harry's mouth fell open. You knew. This whole time, I suspected. The Hogwarts wards confirmed it when you passed through them. They are designed to detect many things, including non-human magical signatures. Yours was distinctive. And you didn't say anything. What would you have had me say? Dumbledore asked gently. You were an 11-year-old boy discovering a world you never knew existed. Adding the burden of your full heritage on top of that seemed cruel. So you let me figure it out on my own. Let me stumble around in the dark, terrified of what I was becoming. I kept watch. Ensured you had support when you needed it. Dumbledore's expression softened. I see that Miss Granger has been a loyal friend through your struggles. That is good. You will need loyal friends in the days ahead. What about Ron? The question came out sharper than Harry intended. Mr. Weasley. Dumbledore sighed. Fear is a powerful thing, Harry. It can turn the bravest heart cold, the truest friend into a stranger. But it can also be overcome, given time, given reason. You think he'll come back? I think that depends on you. On whether you give him a reason to trust you again. Not with words, but with actions. Dumbledore leaned forward. The world is watching you now, Harry. Not just Hogwarts. The Daily Planet has already published stories about strange events at a British boarding school. The Ministry is receiving inquiries. People are asking questions. What do I do? You continue to be who you are. The boy who saves people. The boy who stands between the innocent and harm. Dumbledore's eyes held his. The symbol on your chest, Harry. Do you know what it means? Harry touched his chest instinctively. It's the crest of my family, the House of Ill. It is also a word in the language of Krypton. A word that translates, roughly, as hope. Hope. Harry felt the word settle into him, finding a home somewhere deep in his chest. The people of this world have feared what they do not understand for all of history. Dumbledore continued. But they have also learned to embrace it, to find inspiration in the extraordinary. Your predecessor understood that. He wore that symbol not to intimidate, but to inspire. You're saying I should, what? Become a symbol? I'm saying that you already are one, whether you choose to embrace it or not. The question is what kind of symbol you wish to be. Dumbledore stood. I cannot tell you what to do, Harry, but that is not my place. But I can tell you this: the world needs hope. It always has. And you have the power to give it. Harry sat in silence for a long moment. The weight of the headmaster's words pressed down on him, heavy but not crushing. Not anymore. I don't know if I can be what everyone expects, he said finally. I'm still figuring out who I am. That, Dumbledore said, is the journey of a lifetime, for all of us. He smiled. And for a moment he looked less like the most powerful wizard in the world and more like a kind grandfather. Take your time, Harry. But do not take too long. The darkness is stirring. And when it rises, the world will need someone to stand against it. Harry found Hermione in the room of requirement. She'd discovered it a few weeks ago, a magical room that appeared only when you needed it, transforming into whatever space you required. Right now, it looked like a cross between a library and a laboratory. Books lined the walls. A large open space dominated the center, perfect for testing abilities without breaking anything important. Dumbledore knows, Harry said without preamble. He's known since the beginning. Hermione looked up from the book she was reading. I suspected as much. He's Dumbledore. The man defeated Grindelwald. You really think a Kryptonian biosignature was going to slip past him? You could have mentioned that. You didn't ask. She closed the book. What else did he say? Harry told her. About the symbol meaning hope. About becoming something the world needed. About the darkness stirring. When he finished, Hermione was quiet for a long moment. He's right, you know, she said finally. About all of it. People are scared of you now, but fear fades. What replaces it depends on what you do. What should I do? Keep being you. Hermione smiled. Save people when they need saving. Stand up to bullies, help with homework. Be the Harry who ate too many chocolate frogs on the train. That's what I told Ron. That I'm still me. Then prove it. Not with words. With actions. Over and over, until even Ron can't deny it anymore. Harry looked at her. At this girl who had somehow become his anchor in a world gone mad. Who believed in him when he wasn't sure he believed in himself? You know, he said slowly. In my memories, there was someone like you. A woman who saw through the disguise. Who knew what I was and didn't care. Who believed in me no matter what. Hermione's cheeks went slightly pink. Harry, I'm not saying you're her. We're 12, it's weird. He laughed, breaking the tension. But I'm saying, thank you, for being that person now. For seeing me. Hermione's blush deepened, but she smiled. You're welcome. Even if it is weird. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. The room of requirement hummed quietly around them, a space that existed only because they needed it. So, Hermione said, "Want to practice your heat vision? I've got some theories about how it connects to solar energy absorption, and I'd love to test them." Harry grinned. "You want to study me like a science experiment?" "Obviously. You're the most fascinating thing I've ever encountered. Magically, biologically, and historically. The research potential alone is—" She caught his expression and stopped. "Too intense." "No." Harry shook his head. "Let's do it." And for the first time since the dueling club disaster, Harry felt something like hope. Not the borrowed hope of Jor-El's message. Not the distant hope of Superman's legacy. His own hope, born from friendship and loyalty and the knowledge that he wasn't alone. The masquerade was over. But maybe that was okay. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. Maybe it was time to become something new. Harry looked at the symbol on his chest one more time. The House of El. Hope, a word that had carried a man across the stars, had given a world a hero, had now found its way to him. He didn't know what the future held. Didn't know if Ron would ever forgive him, if the wizarding world would ever accept him, if the darkness Dumbledore had spoken of would come for him before he was ready. But he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't alone. And as long as that was true, as long as he had Hermione and the memory of what he could become, he would keep fighting, keep hoping, keep being the person both his families had sacrificed everything for him to be. Harry Potter, Kal-El, the boy who lived, the last son of Krypton, all of them. None of them, something entirely new, and that he was beginning to realize might just be okay. The call came at 3 in the morning. Harry was dreaming of Metropolis again, flying above the city with the wind in his face and Lois's laughter in his ears, when something cut through the vision like a knife. A sound, a frequency so high that normal human ears couldn't detect it, pitched somewhere beyond the range of anything terrestrial. But Harry's ears weren't normal anymore. They hadn't been for months. He sat bolt upright in bed, his heart pounding against his ribs. The sound was coming from somewhere far away. Not Hogwarts, not even Scotland. It felt like it was pulling at something deep in his chest, tugging at a connection he hadn't known existed until this very moment. Like a thread connecting him to something ancient and powerful and desperately urgent. The fortress. The archive beneath Hogwarts. It was calling to him. No, not calling, warning. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. Harry threw off his covers and grabbed his glasses. The dormitory was dark and quiet around him. Ron's curtains were still drawn, that barrier still firmly in place. Neville was snoring. Seamus had kicked off his blankets in his sleep. He needed to find Hermione. Getting to the girls' dormitory was supposed to be impossible. The stairs turned into a slide if any boy tried to climb them. But Harry didn't need the stairs. He slipped out of Gryffindor Tower through a window, hovered in the cold night air for a moment, then flew around to the other side of the tower where the girls' rooms were. He found Hermione's window by the sound of her heartbeat. She was the only one in that room whose heart beat with the slightly elevated rhythm of someone reading under the covers with a wand light. He tapped on the glass. The curtains flew back and Hermione's startled face appeared. Her expression went from shock to confusion to exasperation in about 2 seconds. "Harry! What are you? How are you?" She glanced down at the empty air beneath him, and seemed to decide that some questions weren't worth asking at 3 in the morning. "Give me a minute." She opened the window and climbed out onto the ledge. Harry caught her arm to steady her. "This is insane," she whispered. "We're 5 stories up. If anyone sees us, something's wrong. The fortress is calling me. There's some kind of warning signal." Hermione's expression shifted immediately. The exasperation vanished, replaced by sharp focus. "The archive beneath the school? I think so. But it feels bigger somehow. Like there's something else. Something that wasn't there before. The Ministry of Magic," Hermione said suddenly. "Harry, the Department of Mysteries. I've been researching it since you told me about the archive. There are stories about a room that no one can open. A room that's been sealed for decades. Some people say it contains artifacts that predate wizardkind entirely. You think there's another archive at the Ministry. I think whatever is calling you might be connected to it. The high-frequency signal you're hearing, it could be a beacon. Kryptonian technology designed to guide survivors to each other." Harry's mind raced. If there was more Kryptonian technology at the Ministry, if there was another piece of his heritage waiting to be discovered, "We need to go there," he said. "Harry, we can't just break into the Ministry of Magic. It's the most heavily guarded building in Wizarding Britain. I'm not asking you to break in. I'm telling you I have to go. Tonight, right now." He met her eyes. "The signal is getting stronger. Whatever's happening, it's happening fast." Hermione stared at him for a long moment. The wind whipped around them, cold and sharp. Below, the grounds of Hogwarts spread out in moonlit silence. "If you're going," she said finally, "then I'm going with you." "Hermione, don't argue. We're partners. Remember?" She smiled grimly. "Besides, someone needs to take notes." Flying with a passenger was harder than Harry expected. Hermione clung to him as they shot through the night sky, her arms wrapped tight around his neck, her face buried in his shoulder. The cold at this altitude was brutal, but Harry didn't feel it. His body had adapted to temperatures that would kill a normal person. Hermione, on the other hand, was shivering violently by the time they reached London. Sorry," she chattered as they landed on a rooftop overlooking the city. "Should have brought a warmer jumper." Harry pulled off his own jumper and wrapped it around her shoulders. It was Dudley's old one. Huge and shapeless, but it was warm. "I don't really feel cold anymore. Should have thought about that before we left. That's fine. I'll live." Hermione hugged the jumper around herself and looked out at the city. London sprawled below them, lights glittering like fallen stars. In the distance, the distinctive towers of Metropolis rose against the night sky, the daily planet globe catching the moonlight. "Where's the Ministry?" Harry asked. "Underground. The visitors' entrance is in central London, but there are other ways in. The Department of Mysteries is the deepest level, past all the regular offices." Hermione pulled out her wand and cast a quick warming charm on herself. "Can you still hear the signal?" Harry closed his eyes and listened. The sound was stronger here, pulsing like a heartbeat. It was coming from beneath the city, somewhere to the east. "This way." They moved through the sleeping city, Harry guiding them by sound alone. The signal led them to a nondescript alley, then to a telephone box that looked like it hadn't been used in decades. "This is it," Hermione said. "The visitors' entrance. But it won't work at this hour. The Ministry's closed for the night." Harry looked at the telephone box, then down at the pavement beneath it. His X-ray vision kicked in, showing him layers of concrete and stone, and then, deeper and impossible space, a cavern of black marble and flickering torches. "I can see it," he said. "The atrium. It's directly below us. Can you see anyone?" "Guards." Harry focused harder. His vision penetrated through more layers. Security desks, empty corridors, and there, near the lifts, 2 figures in dark robes. 2 guards, near the lifts. But they're not paying attention. One of them is reading the Prophet. The other one's asleep. "Can you get us past them?" "I can move faster than they can see." But you can't. Hermione bit her lip. I have a disillusionment charm. It's not perfect, but combined with a silencing charm on my shoes, I might be able to sneak past. That's a lot of might. Do you have a better idea? Harry didn't. So they went with her plan. The telephone box sank slowly into the ground when they entered, descending through layers of earth and stone until it opened into the vast cavern of the Ministry atrium. Harry stepped out first, moving so fast he was invisible to the human eye, positioning himself between the guards and the lifts. Hermione followed more slowly, her form shimmering and indistinct under the disillusionment charm. She moved like a ghost, her footsteps utterly silent, gliding past the security desk where one guard snored softly and the other turned a page of his newspaper. They made it to the lifts without incident. The descent to the Department of Mysteries took forever. The lift rattled and clanked, stopping at floor after floor, announcing departments in a cool female voice. Level 5, Department of International Magical Cooperation. Level 6, Department of Magical Transport. Level 7, Department of Magical Games and Sports. Harry watched the numbers tick down, his enhanced hearing picking up the sounds of the sleeping ministry around them. A cleaning charm working its way through an empty office. A security troll snoring in its post. The tick of 1,000 magical clocks keeping perfect time. Have you ever been here before? He asked Hermione quietly. Once. My parents brought me to see the Wizarding Artifacts exhibit when I first got my Hogwarts letter. But we only saw the public areas. This, she gestured at the lift around them. This is different. Scared. Terrified, she admitted, but also excited. The Department of Mysteries contains knowledge that wizards have been accumulating for centuries, things that challenge our understanding of magic itself. Getting to see it, even like this, she trailed off, a complicated expression on her face. Only you would be excited about breaking into a government facility, Harry said with a slight smile. Only you would fly here from Scotland in the middle of the night because you heard a strange noise. Fair point. Level 8 Atrium. Level 9 Department of Mysteries. The doors opened onto darkness. The Department of Mysteries was nothing like the rest of the Ministry. Where the upper levels had been all marble and torchlight and golden statues, this was black. Black walls. Black floor. Black ceiling that vanished into shadow above them. The only light came from candles that flickered with blue flame, casting strange dancing shadows across every surface. This place gives me the creeps, Hermione whispered. She dropped the disillusionment charm now that they were alone. I've read about it, but reading and seeing are two very different things. The signal is coming from that direction. Harry pointed down a corridor that seemed to stretch into infinity. There's something at the end, something big. They moved forward cautiously. The corridor branched off into dozens of doors, each one unmarked, each one radiating a different kind of energy. Harry's enhanced senses were overwhelmed by the sheer variety of magical signatures. Time manipulation behind one door, the very fabric of reality bending and stretching in ways that made his head hurt. Death itself behind another, a cold emptiness that seemed to suck the warmth from the air. Something that felt like pure chaos swirling behind a third, formless and terrifying. The unspeakables study the fundamental forces of magic here, Hermione explained, her voice hushed with a mixture of awe and nervousness. Time, space, death, love. They've been researching for centuries, trying to understand things that can't be understood, trying to quantify the unquantifiable. Has anyone ever succeeded? Partially. Time turners came from this department. So did the Veil of Death, though no one really understands what that is. The love room has been sealed for 50 years because something happened that no one will talk about. She paused at a door covered in strange symbols that seemed to shift when Harry looked at them directly. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. They're just meant to be witnessed. Some of these doors haven't been opened in years, Harry said. His X-ray vision showed him rooms covered in dust, equipment untouched, experiments abandoned mid-process. Why? Funding cuts, probably. The ministry doesn't always prioritize pure research. Hermione paused at a door that was different from the others. It was larger, for one thing, and the energy coming off it was strange. Not quite magical, but not quite anything else either. Harry. This one. He focused his hearing on the signal. It was deafening now, so strong it made his teeth ache. Yeah, this is it. Harry reached for the door handle. It wouldn't turn. He tried harder, careful not to break it. Still nothing. It's locked, he said. Alohomora, Hermione suggested. He shook his head. This isn't a magical lock. It's something else. He pressed his hand flat against the door's surface. The metal hummed beneath his palm. It's waiting for something. A key. What kind of key? Harry didn't answer. A memory was surfacing. Not from his life as Harry Potter, but from before. A door like this one. A lock that responded only to Kryptonian DNA. He pressed harder. Let the warmth of his palm spread into the metal, and he focused on the symbol on his chest, on the House of L, on who and what he really was. The door clicked. It swung open slowly, revealing a chamber that took Harry's breath away. Crystals. Everywhere. The same pale blue crystals he'd seen in the archive beneath Hogwarts, but more of them. Thousands more. They covered the walls, the ceiling, the floor. They grew from consoles and workstations. They pulsed with inner light, filling the room with an ethereal glow. And in the center of it all, rising from a platform of pure crystal, was something Harry recognized from his dreams. A suit, red and blue, with a cape that hung motionless in the still air. The symbol of the House of L emblazoned across the chest, catching the crystal light and seeming to glow with its own inner fire. Superman's suit. Harry's legs moved of their own accord, carrying him deeper into the chamber. The crystals hummed as he passed, their light pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. He could feel them responding to his presence, recognizing something in him that belonged here. Oh my God! Hermione breathed behind him. She had stopped at the threshold, her eyes wide with wonder. Harry, is that? His voice came out as a whisper. That's what I used to wear. The words felt strange in his mouth. Used to wear. As if it had been him, personally, who had flown over Metropolis in that suit. Who had saved countless lives. Who had died defending a world that wasn't even his by birth. In some ways it had been. He walked toward it as if in a trance. The crystals hummed around him, responding to his presence. When he reached the platform, he stretched out his hand and touched the fabric. It was warm. Not just warm, alive somehow. The material shifted under his fingers, recognizing him. A hologram flickered to life beside him. Jor-El again, but different this time. Older, sadder. The image was damaged, fragmented, cutting in and out. Kal-El, the hologram said. Its voice crackled with static. If you are seeing this message, then I have failed. The suit was meant to be destroyed with krypton. That it survived means the failsafes did not function. I am sorry. Why would you want to destroy it? Harry asked the empty air. The hologram continued as if it could hear him. The suit is more than fabric. It is technology. Kryptonian battle armor, designed to enhance the abilities of its wearer. Under a yellow sun, it makes the strong invincible, but it also changes those who wear it. The longer you wear it, the more it bonds with you. The more it becomes part of you. And the harder it becomes to remove. Harry, Hermione said urgently, maybe you shouldn't. The suit came to Earth with you, my son. When you died, it should have died with you. Instead, it survived, it waited, and now it has found you again. The hologram flickered badly. You must be careful. The suit will give you power beyond imagining. But power always comes with a price. The hologram faded. The room was silent except for the hum of the crystals. Harry stared at the suit, at the symbol on its chest, the same symbol that was burned into his skin. You're not going to put it on, are you? Hermione's voice was worried. Harry, you heard what Jor-El said. It changes people. It bonds with them. I know. So you're going to leave it here. Harry turned to face her. Voldemort and Brainiac are still out there. The hybrid, whatever Quirrell became, it's still planning something. I felt it when we fought. It's not going to stop until it gets what it wants. And you think the suit will help you stop it? I think I need every advantage I can get. He looked back at the suit. But not yet. Jor-El's right. I need to understand it better before I use it. Need to know what I'm getting into. Hermione let out a breath she'd been holding. Good. That's the smart choice. Don't sound so surprised. I'm not. I know how tempting it must be. All that power right there waiting for you. Harry smiled slightly. The most important lesson Superman ever learned was that power isn't everything. The memories I have of him, he could have done anything he wanted. Could have ruled the world if he'd chosen to. But he didn't. He used his power to help people. To inspire them. Not to dominate them. That's very wise. It's not wisdom. It's just remembering who I want to be. A sound from behind them made them both spin around. The door to the chamber had opened. And standing in the doorway, outlined by the blue glow of the crystals, was a figure Harry had hoped never to see again. Not Quirrell this time. The host had changed. But the presence was unmistakable. The cold, calculated intelligence of Brainiac, the burning hatred of Voldemort. The hybrid had found a new body, and it had followed them here. Impressive, the hybrid said. Its voice was different now, smoother, but with that same unsettling dual quality. Two consciousnesses speaking as one, their tones weaving together in a way that was deeply unnatural. You found the secondary archive. We have been searching for this location for months. The Ministry's wards are impressive even for us. Harry stepped in front of Hermione, putting himself between her and the threat. His hand instinctively went to his chest, to the symbol hidden beneath his clothes. The suit on the platform behind him seemed to pulse with awareness, as if it knew what was coming. "Who are you wearing now?" he asked, keeping his voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. "Does it matter? Bodies are temporary. Vessels to be used and discarded. Organic forms are inherently inefficient, prone to decay and failure." The hybrid stepped into the chamber, its movements unnaturally smooth, more machine than human. In the crystal light, Harry could see its face more clearly. A man in his 30s. Dark hair, no remarkable features. Nobody he recognized. Just another victim. But since you asked, this one was an unspeakable. He came down here to investigate unusual energy readings. He never left. You killed him. We improved him. The hybrid smiled. It was a terrible expression on that borrowed face. As we could improve you, Kal-El. The offer remains open. Join us. Merge with us. Together, we could be unstoppable. I've already given you my answer. A pity. The hybrid's eyes flickered with green light. Then you will die, again. And this time, there will be no reincarnation. We will ensure your soul is destroyed completely. It raised its hand. Green energy crackled around its fingers, building into something deadly. Harry moved first. He was across the room in a blur, his fist aimed at the hybrid's chest. But the creature was ready this time. It dodged with inhuman speed, the Brainiac intelligence calculating his trajectory and adjusting in milliseconds. A beam of green energy shot toward Harry. He twisted, letting it pass by his shoulder, feeling the heat of it even through his invulnerable skin. That wasn't a killing curse. That was something else. Something Kryptonian. You're learning, the hybrid said. Adapting. Good. It would be disappointing if you died too easily. Harry launched himself at the creature again. This time he was faster, harder. His fist connected with the hybrid's jaw, sending it crashing backward into a crystal console. The crystals shattered, spraying shards across the room. But the hybrid got up. The damage to its face was healing before Harry's eyes, flesh knitting together, bone reforming. Regeneration. Harry realized. You've integrated Kryptonian healing technology, among other things. The hybrid's hand transformed, metal spreading up its arm, forming into something that looked disturbingly like a weapon. Did you think we spent all that time in the archive just studying? We have been upgrading, evolving, becoming something neither Voldemort nor Brainiac could be alone. The weapon fired, a pulse of energy that Harry barely dodged, the beam scorching the wall behind him and leaving a smoking crater. "Harry?" Hermione's voice cut through the chaos. She was crouched behind a crystal formation, wand out, her face pale but determined.
The suit! You need to use the suit!
"I told you. I'm not ready for—" "You don't have time to be ready." She fired a spell at the hybrid, a stunner that bounced off harmlessly.
"It's going to kill us both!"
The hybrid turned toward her, that terrible smile spreading across its face. The girl. Yes, we had almost forgotten about her. It raised its weapon arm. "Thank you for reminding us." Harry didn't think. He dove in front of Hermione just as the weapon fired. The beam hit him square in the chest. Pain, actual pain, something he hadn't felt since becoming what he was. The energy was designed for Kryptonians. Designed to hurt them, to kill them. Harry fell to his knees, gasping. His vision was blurring. His strength was draining. "Harry!" Hermione was beside him, her hands on his shoulders, her face swimming in and out of focus. "Harry, stay with me." The hybrid approached slowly, savoring the moment. A Kryptonian weakness we discovered in the archive. A frequency that disrupts your cellular structure. Not lethal in small doses, but with enough exposure. It aimed the weapon again. "Well, you understand." Harry's hand found Hermione's and squeezed. "Get out of here. I'm not leaving you." "Hermione, please." "No." Her voice was fierce. Tears were streaming down her face, but her jaw was set. "We're partners. Remember?" The hybrid laughed. "How touching. You can die together." Then it raised the weapon for the final shot. And the suit moved. It launched itself from the platform, responding to some signal Harry hadn't consciously sent. The fabric wrapped around him in an instant, covering his body, sealing against his skin. Power flooded through him, washing away the pain, filling every cell with golden light. The symbol on his chest blazed like a star. Harry rose to his feet. He could feel the suit bonding with him, becoming part of him, just as Jor-El had warned. But right now, in this moment, he didn't care about the price. Right now, he had someone to protect. "No," the hybrid said. For the first time, there was something like fear in its voice. "That's not possible. The suit shouldn't respond to you. You're not the original Kal-El." "Maybe not." Harry's voice resonated strangely, amplified by the suit's systems. "But I'm the one who's here now." He moved. The battle was brutal and fast. Harry struck with strength he hadn't known he possessed, the suit amplifying his already considerable power. Each punch sent shockwaves through the chamber, shattering crystals, cracking the floor. The hybrid fought back with everything it had, Kryptonian weapons and Voldemort's dark magic combined into a devastating arsenal. A Cruciatus curse hit Harry in the back. He felt the magic slide off him like water, the suit absorbing and dispersing the energy before it could reach his nerves. He spun and caught the hybrid's arm as it tried to fire the frequency weapon again, crushing the metal barrel with his bare hand. The hybrid screamed and threw a bolt of green lightning. Harry took it on his chest, the symbol of El flaring bright as the suit converted the magical energy into something he could use. He could feel the power flowing into him, filling his cells, making him stronger. "Impossible," the hybrid snarled. "That should have killed you." "Lot of things should have killed me by now," Harry replied. He grabbed the hybrid by its collar and lifted it off the ground. Still here. The hybrid's form began to shift, the unspeakable's body distorting as Brainiac tried to reconfigure its host. Metal sprouted from its skin. Its eyes split into multiple sensors. It was becoming something inhuman, something monstrous. Harry didn't give it time to finish the transformation. His heat vision lanced out, searing hot, slicing through the metal components before they could fully form. The hybrid shrieked, a sound that was part Voldemort's rage and part Brainiac's error protocols. But Harry was faster, stronger. The suit protected him from the frequency weapon, neutralized the magic before it could touch him. He caught the hybrid by the throat and lifted it off the ground. "It's over," he said. "Is it?" The hybrid laughed, even with Harry's hand crushing its windpipe. "You've won a battle, Kal-El, not the war. We are Legion. We are eternal. Every time you destroy one of our hosts, we will find another, and another, until eventually you will falter, and we will be waiting. Then I'll keep fighting. Will you? Forever. Can you bear that burden, child? Can you carry the weight of never-ending war?" Harry squeezed harder. The hybrid's eyes flickered, the green light fading, and then the body went limp, the consciousness fleeing to some other host, some other corner of the world. Harry lowered the unconscious unspeakable to the ground. The man was still alive. Barely, but alive. "Harry." Hermione's voice was soft behind him. He turned. She was staring at him with an expression he couldn't read. Maybe. Or something in between. "The suit," she said. "It's... You look, I know." Harry looked down at himself, at the red and blue fabric, the golden belt, the cape that hung behind him, at the symbol of hope blazing on his chest. "I look like him, like Superman." "Nope." Hermione shook her head slowly. "You look like you. Finally, completely you." They flew back to Hogwarts as dawn broke over the horizon. Harry carried Hermione in his arms, the suit's cape streaming behind them like a banner of red against the lightening sky. The cold of high altitude didn't touch either of them now. The suit had extended some kind of protective field around Hermione, keeping her warm and safe as they shot through the clouds. The world below was waking up. Cars on distant motorways, their headlights cutting through the last of the night. Lights flickering on in farmhouses, early risers starting their day. A train crawling across the countryside like a silver snake, passengers sleeping behind fogged windows, oblivious to the two figures passing overhead. Harry had never seen the world from this perspective. Not truly. He'd flown before, brief bursts of speed when no one was watching, but never like this. Never with purpose. Never in the suit. Everything looked different from up here. Smaller, somehow, but also more precious. All those lives going about their business, unaware of the battles being fought in their name, unaware of the darkness that lurked in the spaces between their ordinary days. "What happens now?" Hermione asked. Her arms were around his neck, her head resting against his shoulder. The fear from earlier had faded, replaced by something calmer. Trust, maybe, or just exhaustion. "I don't know," Harry admitted. "The hybrid is still out there, still planning. And now it knows what I can do, what I've become." "That's not what I meant." She looked up at him. "I meant, what happens to you?" "The suit." Jor-El said it bonds with its wearer, that it changes them. Harry was quiet for a moment. He could feel the suit against his skin, not like clothing, but like a second layer of himself. It was part of him now, inseparable. "I can feel it," he said finally. "The bond, it's like having another voice in my head. Not talking to me exactly, more like supporting me, encouraging me. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know yet. Ask me in a few years." Hermione smiled slightly. "I'll hold you to that." Hogwarts appeared on the horizon, its towers catching the first light of morning. Harry slowed as they approached, not wanting anyone to see them. He landed in the shadows near the forbidden forest and let Hermione down gently. The suit seemed to understand his need for discretion. As he thought about it, the fabric shifted, changed, flowing into something that looked almost like ordinary robes. The symbol on his chest faded to invisibility. The cape retracted into the collar. "Handy," Hermione said. "Very." They walked toward the castle in comfortable silence. The grounds were empty at this hour, the grass wet with dew, the air fresh and cold. "Harry," Hermione said as they reached the doors, "thank you." "For what?" "For saving my life, for taking that beam for me, for being willing to die to protect me." She stopped walking and faced him. "Nobody's ever done anything like that for me before. You would have done the same. I would have tried. But I don't have superpowers. You have something better." Harry touched his temple. "You have this. And honestly, that scares our enemies more than anything I can do." Hermione's cheeks went pink. She looked away, then back at him, and before Harry could react, she rose on her toes and kissed him lightly on the cheek. "For luck," she said. "For whatever comes next." Harry's face felt warm in a way that had nothing to do with his alien physiology. His heart was doing something strange, beating faster than it should, considering he'd just fought a battle that would have killed any normal person. "For luck," he agreed, his voice coming out slightly rough. They stood there for a moment, neither quite knowing what to say next. The morning light was growing stronger, painting the castle walls in shades of gold and rose. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster crowed. The ordinary sounds of a new day beginning. "We should probably get inside before someone sees us," Hermione said finally. "Filch will be starting his rounds soon, right?" "Yeah." Harry cleared his throat. "Wouldn't want to lose house points for saving the world." Hermione laughed. It was a tired laugh, but genuine. "McGonagall would probably still give us detention. Worth it." They walked into the castle together, the first rays of sunlight streaming through the windows, filling Harry with strength, with hope, with the knowledge that whatever came next, he wouldn't face it alone. The suit hummed quietly against his skin, the symbol of L pulsed with hidden light, and somewhere in the world, the hybrid was already planning its next move. But that was a problem for another day. For now, in this moment, Harry Potter let himself feel something he'd rarely allowed before. Peace. The suit settled against his skin, warm and alive, ready for whatever challenge came next. The memories of Cal, L whispered at the edges of his consciousness, not demanding, not overwhelming, just present. A guide. A legacy. He thought about everything that had led him here. The cupboard under the stairs. The car he'd stopped with his bare hands. The Sorting Hat seeing two souls in one body. Ron's fear and Hermione's faith. Jer-Il's message and Dumbledore's wisdom. All of it had been leading to this moment. To this version of himself, standing in the light of a new day, wearing the symbol of hope on his chest. He wasn't just Harry Potter anymore. He wasn't just Kal-El's reincarnation. He was something new, something that combined the best of both worlds, both lives, both legacies. And whatever came next, he would face it head-on. Because that's what heroes did. The sky over London was burning. Harry stood on the rooftop of the Daily Planet building, watching the chaos unfold below. The hybrid had made its move. After months of preparation, months of gathering power and stealing technology from both magical and Kryptonian sources, months of Harry and Hermione tracking its movements and trying to predict its next step, it had finally launched its endgame, and it was worse than anything they had imagined. A massive ship hung above the city, blotting out the afternoon sun. Not a spacecraft exactly, but something worse. A techno-organic monstrosity that combined Brainiac's processing power with Voldemort's darkest magic. A fusion of two civilizations' most terrible achievements. Tentacles of metal and shadow reached down from its hull like the fingers of a dying god, tearing into buildings, ripping through streets, transforming everything they touched into something cold and mechanical. Terraforming. The hybrid was trying to terraform London into a new Krypton. A dead world of crystal and circuitry, with itself as the god of this remade reality. Every person it touched became part of its network, their consciousness absorbed, their bodies converted into drones that served its will. People were screaming, running, dying. Harry could hear every single one of them, their heartbeats and their prayers and their final words. A mother calling for her child. A man begging for his life. An old woman whispering a prayer she'd learned as a girl. The weight of it pressed down on him like a physical force, threatening to crush him before the battle even began. He couldn't save them all, he knew that. Even with all his power, even with the suit amplifying his abilities, he was still just one person. One person against an army. One person against the combined might of Voldemort's magic and Brainiac's technology. But he had to try. Harry. Hermione's voice came through the communication crystal she'd enchanted to work with his suit's systems. The Ministry's response teams are overwhelmed. The Aurors can't get close to the ship. Their spells just bounce off. I know. I can see them. Harry watched a squad of red-robed wizards attempt to apparate onto the ship's hull. They materialized for half a second before being blasted away by automated defenses. Where are you? Ground level. Helping with evacuations. Dumbledore's here too, and most of the Hogwarts staff. We're getting people to safety as fast as we can. Good. Keep them moving. I'm going up. Harry, wait. There's something else. The hybrid. It's not just attacking randomly. The tentacles are forming a pattern. I've been tracking them, and they're converging on specific points. Ley line intersections. Places where magical energy is concentrated. It's trying to tap into the magical grid. Harry realized, if it can harness the ley lines, it won't just transform London. It could spread across the entire country, the entire world. That's what I was afraid of. Hermione's voice was tight with fear, but steady. She'd learned to stay calm in crisis over the past year. You have to stop it before it completes the connection. Once it's plugged into the ley line network, there won't be anything powerful enough to stop it. Then I'd better not waste any more time. Harry rose into the air. The suit responded to his will, the cape billowing behind him, the symbol of L blazing on his chest like a beacon. He could feel the sun's power flowing through him, even though the sky was dark with smoke and shadow. The suit was amplifying his solar absorption, storing energy for when he needed it most. He flew toward the ship. The automated defenses opened fire immediately. Beams of green energy, pulses of dark magic, projectiles moving faster than sound. Harry dodged most of them, absorbed the rest. The suit protected him, converting hostile energy into fuel for his own power. He punched through the hull like it was paper. Inside, the ship was a nightmare of metal and flesh. Organic components pulsed alongside mechanical ones, creating a biomechanical horror that seemed almost alive. Screens flickered with Kryptonian script and magical runes, displaying data that Harry couldn't fully understand, but recognized instinctively. The hybrid was waiting for him at the center. It no longer looked human. Whatever body Voldemort and Brainiac had been sharing, it had been completely transformed. They had merged fully now, abandoning the pretense of flesh entirely, creating something that was neither wizard nor machine, but something entirely new. A towering figure of silver metal and pulsing magic, easily 15 feet tall, with eyes that burned with green fire and a voice that echoed with the combined hatred of two monsters who had terrorized worlds. Cables and tentacles extended from its back, connecting it to the ship's systems. It was the heart of this machine, the consciousness that drove everything. Without it, the ship was just metal. With it, the ship was a weapon capable of ending civilization. Kal-Il, it said. The sound seemed to come from everywhere at once, reverberating through the metal walls through Harry's bones. We knew you would come. We counted on it. Your heroism is predictable. Your need to save others makes you easy to manipulate. I'm here to stop you. Are you? The hybrid laughed. It was a terrible sound, mechanical and cruel, layered with Voldemort's high cold mirth and Brainiac's processing hum. Look around you, child. This is our apotheosis. The merging of magic and technology, of ambition and logic. Everything Voldemort ever wanted. The immortality, the power, the dominion over lesser beings. Everything Brainiac ever sought. The preservation of knowledge, the optimization of life, the elimination of chaos, combined into a single perfect consciousness. You're destroying innocent people, transforming them against their will. This isn't perfection. This is murder. Murder implies loss. What we offer is transcendence. The organics we transform become part of something greater. Their consciousness joins ours. Their memories, their knowledge, they live on within us, preserved forever. A's slaves. A's components. The hybrid moved closer. It was easily twice Harry's height now, its metal form shifting and reconfiguring as it walked. But we did not bring you here to debate philosophy. We brought you here because we need you, Kal-El, your Kryptonian DNA, your connection to the House of El. You are the key to completing our transformation. I'll die before I help you. That, the hybrid said, can be arranged. It attacked. The fight was unlike anything Harry had experienced. The hybrid was faster than before, stronger, more coordinated. It had optimized itself for this confrontation, analyzing every fight Harry had ever been in, learning his patterns and weaknesses. A metal tentacle caught Harry across the chest and sent him crashing through a wall. He recovered in mid-air, launched himself back, and drove his fist into the hybrid's face. The impact sent shockwaves through the ship, but the hybrid barely staggered. You are strong, it acknowledged. But strength alone cannot defeat us. We have transcended the limitations of physical combat. Magic flooded the space between them. Dark curses that Harry had never seen before, pulled from the depths of Voldemort's twisted knowledge. The suit absorbed some of them, but not all. Pain lanced through Harry's body as one of the spells found a gap in his defenses. He fell to one knee, gasping. You see, the hybrid loomed over him. You cannot win this fight. You are one. We are many. Every mind we have absorbed, every consciousness we have integrated, they all fight against you now. 1 billion voices crying out for your destruction. Harry looked up at the monster that had killed his parents, that had terrorized the wizarding world, that had now merged with an alien intelligence to threaten all of humanity. He thought about everything he'd been through, every battle, every loss, every moment of doubt, and he thought about what Jor-El had said, what Dumbledore had said, what Hermione had shown him through her unwavering faith. Hope. That's what the symbol on his chest meant. That's what he was supposed to represent. You're wrong, Harry said. He rose to his feet. The suit blazed brighter, drawing power from somewhere deep inside him. I'm not alone. A sound from behind the hybrid made it turn. Ron Weasley stood in the breach Harry had made in the hole. He was holding his wand in a shaking hand, his face pale with terror, but his jaw was set with determination. Get away from him, Ron said. His voice cracked, but he didn't lower his wand. You bloody metal git. Harry stared. Ron, what are you doing here? What does it look like? Ron didn't take his eyes off the hybrid. His wand arm was shaking badly, and there was a cut on his cheek that was dripping blood onto his collar, but his voice was steady. I'm being a complete idiot, apparently, flying up to a giant evil ship on a borrowed broomstick to help someone I called a monster 3 months ago. You called me a monster? Yeah, well. Ron's voice was rough with emotion. I was wrong, wasn't I? Bloody wrong. Hermione's been yelling at me about it for weeks. Wouldn't let me forget it for a second. And my mum, she found out what I said, and she sent me a howler so loud it woke up the entire tower. He swallowed hard. But that's not why I'm here. Then why? Because I saw that thing on the news, attacking the city, and I thought about what you did at the dueling club. How you protected Justin without even thinking about it. How you've protected everyone every single time, even when people were scared of you. Even when I was scared of you. Ron's eyes finally met Harry's. They were red, rimmed, whether from tears or smoke Harry couldn't tell. You never stopped being my friend, even when I was too much of a coward to be yours. And I'm not letting you die alone up here. This is touching, the hybrid interrupted, but irrelevant. One more wand will not change the outcome of this battle. Maybe not. Ron's wand hand was still shaking, but his voice was getting stronger. But I'm not alone either. More figures appeared in the breach. Fred and George Weasley, grinning manically despite the circumstances. their robes singed and their wands already crackling with whatever chaotic spells they'd cooked up for this occasion. Neville Longbottom, clutching his wand like a lifeline, his face set with the same determination he'd shown when facing the hybrid's drones on the way up. Luna Lovegood, looking around the ship's interior with mild curiosity, as if touring an interesting museum exhibit rather than infiltrating an alien war machine. And behind them, dozens more. Students from Hogwarts who had answered the call when their world needed them. Gryffindors and Ravenclaws and Hufflepuffs, united against a common enemy. Even a few Slytherins, Daphne Greengrass and Blaise Zabini among them, proving that house rivalries meant nothing in the face of total annihilation. The D.A., Dumbledore's army. Kids who had learned to fight in secret, who had trained for a war they'd hoped would never come. Now they were here, standing between a cosmic horror and the destruction of everything they loved. Hermione's idea, Ron said to Harry, a note of pride in his voice. She said you'd need backup. She's coordinating things from the ground, keeping the evacuation moving, making sure the Aurors don't get in over their heads. Sent us up here to cause chaos while you do the heavy lifting. This is meaningless. The hybrid snarled. Its composure was cracking. It hadn't planned for this. Its predictive algorithms had assumed Harry would come alone, that his isolation would make him vulnerable. You are children playing at war. You cannot hope to challenge us. Maybe not, Fred said. But we can definitely annoy you, George finished. They attacked. It was chaos. Beautiful, glorious chaos. Spells flew in every direction. The twins were setting off some kind of magical explosives that disrupted the ship's systems. Neville had somehow gotten his hands on a plant that was eating through metal like acid. Luna was calmly deflecting curses while commenting on the interesting architecture. And Ron was at Harry's side, covering his back, fighting alongside him like the past months of silence had never happened. "I'm sorry," Ron said between spells, "for what I said, for being scared, for not trusting you." "Later," Harry said. "We can talk about it later." "Right, later, after we save the world." After we save the world. The hybrid was fighting on multiple fronts now, its attention divided. Harry saw his opening. "Keep it busy," he told Ron. "I need to get to the core. If I can destroy the central processor, the whole ship goes down. Go. We've got this." Harry flew. The core was deep in the heart of the ship. Harry tore through bulkheads and security systems, following the flow of power to its source. The ship was trying to stop him, sending drones and traps and automated defenses, but nothing could slow him down. He was operating on pure instinct now, the suit and his Kryptonian heritage working in perfect harmony. He found it in a chamber at the very center of the ship, a sphere of pulsing energy, half magic and half technology, containing the concentrated essence of the hybrid's consciousness. This was where Voldemort and Brainiac truly lived, their merged mind uploaded into a digital magical matrix that could survive the destruction of any physical form. "You cannot destroy us," the hybrid's voice echoed from the sphere. "We have transcended physical existence. Even if you shatter this shell, our consciousness will simply transfer to another host. We are eternal. We are inevitable." "Maybe," Harry said, "but I've got an idea about that." He didn't attack the sphere. Instead, he grabbed it. The hybrid's consciousness tried to invade his mind, tried to merge with him the way it had merged with so many others. But Harry's mind wasn't empty. It held two souls already, Harry Potter and the echo of Kal-El, and there was no room for a third. More than that, the suit recognized the threat. It activated defenses that Harry hadn't known existed, creating a barrier around his consciousness that the hybrid couldn't penetrate. "What are you doing?" The hybrid's voice was tinged with something new. "Fear. Release us. I'm taking you somewhere you can't hurt anyone." Harry flew upward. Through the ship's hull, metal and magic parting before him like water. Through the smoke and chaos of the battle below, where his friends were still fighting, still holding the line. Through the clouds, then above them, the air growing thin and cold around him. The hybrid struggled in his grip, but Harry held on. The suit was feeding him energy, the last reserves of solar power it had stored, everything it had left. It wasn't going to be enough to get him back down. Harry knew that. He'd known it the moment he'd made this choice. But some things were worth dying for. The suit protected him as they left the Earth's atmosphere. Space stretched out around them, cold and infinite and utterly silent. The sun blazed in the distance, a ball of nuclear fire that had given Harry his power, that had made Superman a god among mortals. It was pouring power into him even now, but the cold of the void was fighting back, trying to drain him faster than he could absorb. He could see the Earth below, a blue marble hanging in the darkness, fragile and beautiful. All those people, all those lives, Ron and Hermione and everyone he'd ever cared about, all of them down there, all of them counting on him. What is this? The hybrid was panicking now, its composure finally cracking. Out here, away from the ship, away from its network of absorbed minds, it was just one consciousness against Harry's two. "Where are you taking us?" "Somewhere without hosts," Harry said. "Somewhere without victims. Somewhere you can't transfer to anything, because there's nothing here but empty space."
You'll die. Your suit cannot sustain you indefinitely.
"You'll suffocate, freeze, and we will simply wait until your corpse drifts back to Earth." "Maybe." Harry looked at the sphere in his hands, at the swirling consciousness of his greatest enemies, trapped in a prison of their own making. "But I don't think so. The suit was designed for space travel, and I'm betting I can survive a lot longer out here than you can survive without a host." He squeezed. The sphere cracked. Energy spilled out, but there was nowhere for it to go. No bodies to possess, no machines to inhabit. Just the endless vacuum of space, absorbing the hybrid's consciousness like water absorbing a drop of ink.
No.
The hybrid's voice was fragmenting, breaking apart.
This cannot be. We are eternal.
"We are You're finished," Harry said. The sphere shattered. The consciousness of Voldemort and Brainiac, merged and twisted and utterly evil, dispersed into the void. Without a host, without a vessel, without any anchor to hold them together, they simply faded. Two monsters who had terrorized worlds, reduced to nothing but scattered energy dissipating into the infinite dark. Harry floated alone in space, the Earth a blue marble far below him. It was over. He came down like a meteor. The hybrid was gone. Truly gone this time, its consciousness scattered across the void with no anchor to hold it together. But the battle wasn't over yet. The ship was falling apart without the hybrid's mind to hold it together, its systems failing one by one, its structure collapsing in on itself. And Harry's friends were still inside. Harry pushed himself to his limit and beyond. The suit was nearly depleted, its reserves drained by the trip to space, but he forced more power through it anyway. He caught up to the falling ship in the upper atmosphere, his body screaming with the effort, and used his heat vision to cut through the failing hull. Ron was the first one he found. His best friend was unconscious but alive, slumped against a wall, a nasty cut on his forehead, seeping blood into his red hair. Harry scooped him up and kept moving. The twins were arguing about whose explosion had been more effective even as the ship disintegrated around them. Neville was apologizing to his plant for the trauma it had experienced, clutching the pot to his chest like a firstborn child. Luna was commenting that the view of the city from up here was quite nice, considering the circumstances, and did anyone else notice the Rackspurts fleeing the ship in droves? Harry got them all to the ground, just before the ship came apart completely, raining down in pieces that the Aurors and the Ministry's cleanup crews were already moving to contain. The impact scattered debris across 3 city blocks, but the containment shields held. No one else died that day. Hermione was waiting for him when he touched down. She ran across the rubble-strewn street and threw her arms around him, not caring about the crowd of onlookers. not caring about the cameras that had started to appear, not caring about anything except that he was alive. "You did it," she said into his shoulder. "You actually did it. We did it." Harry held her tight, the suit retracting enough that he could feel the warmth of her against him. "All of us." Together. Ron approached slowly, Ginny helping him walk. He looked at Harry with an expression that was complicated, full of guilt and relief and something that might have been admiration. "So," he said, "that was something?" "Yeah. You went to space." "I did. To kill Voldemort. And Brainiac. They were kind of a package deal." Ron was quiet for a moment. Then he stuck out his hand.
I'm sorry,
he said. "For everything. For being scared. For not trusting you. For saying all those horrible things." Harry looked at the offered hand. At his first friend in the wizarding world. At the boy who had sat with him on the train and shared his sweets and explained Quidditch and made him feel, for the first time in his life, like he belonged somewhere. The boy who had betrayed him out of fear. The boy who had come back when it mattered most. Fear was a human thing. Harry understood that now, understood it in a way he couldn't have before. Ron had been scared because Harry was different, because the powers Harry had were beyond anything a normal wizard could comprehend. That fear was understandable, expected even. What mattered was what Ron had done with that fear. He could have stayed away. Could have let Harry fight alone. Could have hidden behind the terror that had driven him to say those horrible things. Instead, he had flown into a battlefield. Had faced a monster that could have killed him without effort. Had stood beside Harry when it counted. That was bravery. That was friendship. That was what the Sorting Hat had seen in Ron Weasley when it had shouted Gryffindor all those years ago. He took the hand. And then he pulled Ron into a hug. "You came back," Harry said. "When it mattered, you came back. That's what counts." "He's our alien," Ron said, his voice muffled against Harry's shoulder. "That's what I told the others. When Hermione said you needed help, I said, he's our alien, and we're not letting him fight alone." Harry laughed. It was wet and ragged and probably not very heroic, but it was real. "Your alien," he repeated. "I like that." The aftermath took weeks to sort out. The wizarding world was in an uproar. A giant ship had attacked London in broad daylight. Magic had been used openly. Muggles had seen everything. The statute of secrecy, which had protected the magical world for centuries, was effectively dead. And at the center of it all was Harry Potter. The boy who lived. The last son of Krypton. The man of tomorrow. The Daily Planet ran the story on their front page. A photograph of Harry in the suit, hovering above the burning city, the symbol of El bright against the chaos. The headline was simple, "Su Pyrum, Ritur and S." It wasn't quite accurate. Harry wasn't Superman. He was something new, something different. But the world needed a symbol, and that symbol had been waiting for him all along. Dumbledore called him to his office a week after the battle. The old wizard looked tired but satisfied, his blue eyes twinkling behind his half-moon spectacles. The office was the same as always, filled with silver instruments and sleeping portraits, Fawkes preening on his perch by the window. "The world has changed, Harry," Dumbledore said, gesturing for Harry to sit. "Magic and mundane, wizard and muggle, all of it is coming together now. The statute of secrecy held for 3 centuries, but some changes cannot be resisted forever. There will be fear in the coming years, suspicion, conflict, but also opportunity. The chance to build something better than what came before. What do you want me to do? What you have always done. Be yourself. Help where you can. Inspire where you must." Dumbledore leaned forward, his expression growing more serious. "You stand at the intersection of 3 worlds now, Harry. The magical world, the muggle world, and the legacy of Krypton. No one else can bridge those gaps the way you can. I'm not a diplomat. I'm not a politician. I'm just a symbol." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. "The symbol you wear is not just Kryptonian, Harry. It is universal. A reminder that even in the darkest times, hope endures. That is not a small thing. That is, perhaps, the most important thing of all. Harry looked down at his chest. The suit had become part of him now, as much as his glasses or his scar. He could feel it humming quietly beneath his ordinary clothes, ready to emerge whenever he needed it. "I'm not sure I'm ready for all of this," he admitted. "No one ever is." Dumbledore's eyes were kind. "But you have something that makes all the difference, Harry. You have people who believe in you. Friends who will stand beside you. A family, even if it's not the one you were born into." Harry thought about Ron and Hermione. About the Weasleys who had welcomed him into their home. About Hogwarts itself, the first place he'd ever felt like he belonged. "Yeah," he said softly, "I do." 6 months later, Harry stood on the roof of the Daily Planet building, watching the sun set over Metropolis. The city had recovered from the attack, as cities always did. Cranes dotted the skyline where new buildings rose from the ashes of old ones. The streets that had been torn apart by the hybrid's tentacles were smooth again, freshly paved, already worn by the feet of thousands of people going about their daily lives. Life went on. It always did. Harry had nearly died coming back from space. The suit had kept him alive, barely, redirecting every scrap of solar energy it could absorb into keeping his cells functioning. He'd fallen through the atmosphere like a meteor, unconscious, the suit's automated systems guiding him toward the ground. Hermione had found him in a crater in Hyde Park, barely breathing, the suit cracked and flickering. She'd stayed by his bedside for 3 days while he healed. Ron had brought food. The Weasley twins had snuck in joke products that kept exploding at inopportune moments. Dumbledore had visited once, staying just long enough to leave a single sugar-coated lemon drop on Harry's pillow. When Harry had finally woken up, the first thing he'd seen was Hermione's face, tear-streaked and exhausted and beautiful. "You're an idiot," she'd said. "I know. You almost died. I know. If you ever do anything like that again, I'll kill you myself." "Fair enough." That had been 6 months ago. The world had changed in ways both obvious and subtle since then. He wore a different kind of suit now. Wizard's robes over Kryptonian armor, the symbol of L visible at his collar. A bridge between two worlds. A promise that both could coexist. The suit had repaired itself over the months, bonding even more deeply with him, becoming as much a part of him as his magic or his memories. "You know," Hermione said from beside him, "I never thought I'd be standing on top of a building with a superhero watching the sunset. It wasn't really in my 5-year plan. Life rarely goes according to plan. No, it doesn't." She smiled at him, the wind catching her hair, turning it into a wild halo around her face. The sunset painted her features in shades of gold and rose. "But sometimes it turns out better than you could have imagined." Harry reached out and took her hand. It was a simple gesture, one they'd made 100 times before over the past months. Walking to class, studying in the library, standing together against everything the world threw at them. But it meant something different now. A promise, a beginning, an acknowledgement of something that had been growing between them since that first night in the library when she'd believed him about the impossible things. "I've been thinking," Harry said quietly, "about everything that's happened. About who I was, who I am, who I might become. And I keep coming back to the same thing. What's that? None of it would have mattered without you. Without Ron. Without everyone who stood by me when things got hard." He turned to face her fully. "I could have all the power in the universe, and it wouldn't mean anything if I didn't have people to share it with. People to protect. People to come home to." Hermione's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Harry, the ministry wants to make you an official liaison," Hermione said after a moment, her voice slightly thick, "between the magical world and the Muggle governments. They're calling the position the Wizard of Steel. That's a terrible name. I know. I suggested Hope Ambassador, but apparently that was too on the nose." Harry laughed. "I'll think about it. But first, He looked out at the city, at the world that had become his home, at the future that stretched out before him full of possibility and danger and hope. "I think I want to just be Harry for a while. Harry Potter, kid from the cupboard under the stairs who somehow ended up here. That kid saved the world. That kid had help." He squeezed her hand. The best help anyone could ask for. They stood together as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Somewhere in the city, a siren wailed. Someone needed help. Harry smiled. The suit hummed beneath his clothes, ready and waiting. "Time to go to work," he said. He kissed Hermione once quickly, and then he was gone, shooting into the sky like a comet, the red cape streaming behind him, the symbol of L blazing in the last light of day. Hermione watched him go, a smile on her face, and her hand pressed to her lips where his had been a moment before. In the distance, she could see him banking over the Thames, heading toward whatever emergency had called him away. A red and blue streak against the darkening sky, moving faster than any broom could fly, carrying hope to wherever it was needed most. She thought about everything they'd been through together. The library at midnight, the archive beneath Hogwarts, the Department of Mysteries, the dueling club and its aftermath, Ron's fear and eventual return, the final battle against the hybrid, watching Harry fly into space with the monster that had killed his parents. It had been terrifying. All of it. There had been moments when she'd been certain they would fail, certain that the darkness would win, certain that she would lose him forever. But they hadn't failed. They had won. And now, standing on this rooftop watching the sun set on a world that still existed because of what they'd done together, Hermione felt something she hadn't expected to feel. Proud. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new enemies, new battles to fight. The world was changing, magic and mundane colliding in ways that would reshape everything. There would be fear and suspicion and conflict. There would be people who hated Harry for what he was, who saw him as a threat rather than a protector. But there would also be people who saw him as Hermione saw him, as hope made flesh, as proof that even the darkest circumstances could produce something wonderful. A boy who had been told he was nothing had become everything. A hero had risen from the ashes of two broken worlds, and hope, as it always did, endured. Hermione smiled and turned to go. There was research to be done, after all, new phenomena to document, a brave new world to understand, and a hero to welcome home when the night's work was done.